Sometimes, the smallest glance reveals the largest truth. He hadn't meant to be here. The polished halls of the elementary school smelled faintly of disinfectant and peanut butter, and the chatter of children ricocheted off the linoleum floors like errant glass shards. Elon's steps were measured, almost cautious, as if the very air might recoil if he walked too loudly. He kept his hand brushing against the cool metal of his jacket, a subconscious attempt at grounding himself. There was a hum, subtle, like the lingering vibration of a city street at night, threading through the cafeteria doors ahead. Inside, the lunchroom was a kaleidoscope of chaos. The smell of fries and warm bread clashed with the faint tang of sanitizing spray. Tiny chairs scraped against the floor with sharp, irregular rhythm. He could hear the metallic clink of trays, the soft whisper of paper napkins, and the distant thrum of a heater struggling to keep the room warm. It was ordinary and mundane, and yet, for him, charged with a strange electricity, a tension like static before a storm. He spotted her immediately. Not because of her height or hair or the way she laughed, though all of those drew him in, but because of the small, deliberate movements she made while eating. Her hands never rested completely. They tapped, adjusted, fluttered over her tray in a tiny, private choreography. He recognized it. That same restless energy had always been his own, and for a moment, watching her, he wondered if she even knew he was there. "Dad," she whispered suddenly, leaning across the table in a way that startled him. Her voice was soft but precise, cutting through the background clamor. She had the uncanny ability to speak just loud enough to pierce the noise but not enough to draw attention. The unexpectedness of it made his stomach lurch. He crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. Her pupils were wide, reflecting the fluorescent lights in tiny, distorted galaxies. I didn't know you'd come," she murmured, almost more to herself than to him. Her lips pressed into a line, a hesitant barrier against excitement and embarrassment. Somewhere behind him, a chair scraped across the floor in a harsh, drawn-out squeal. A fork clattered onto a tray. He realized he had been holding his breath. He exhaled slowly, letting the tension unwind in tiny increments, but the rhythm of his own heartbeat seemed unnaturally loud in his ears. It was a heavy, deliberate thump, a baseline to the cafeteria's melody of small, human disturbances. "Hey," he said softly. Simple, ordinary, but even that single word felt monumental. He could see the slight flicker of recognition, almost like a spark bouncing across the surface of water. She studied him, then looked down at her tray, fingering the edges of her sandwich wrapper as though it were a delicate artifact. Time folded around him. The ordinary sounds of children chatter, laughter, occasional squeals of delight or frustration became something else. He noticed subtleties that would have normally escaped him. The faint metallic rattle from the heating vent above, the shiver of light across the linoleum, the almost imperceptible movement of a janitor's mop in the far corner. Every sound layered on top of each other, weaving into a complex, delicate tapestry that somehow felt alive. He caught sight of a boy nearby, intent on constructing a precarious tower of chocolate milk cartons. The structure trembled with every minor bump of the table. A girl leaned back, her braids swinging as she giggled, brushing past the tower, and Elon flinched reflexively. The tower wobbled dangerously, and in that briefest moment, he felt a pulse of connection, an understanding of the precariousness of small things, the fragility of worlds, both large and tiny, seen and unseen. "You're drawing," she said suddenly, pulling a folded sheet of paper from her backpack. She slid it across the table toward him, her small fingers brushing against his. The contact was fleeting, but in that instant, it was electric. He bent down, eyes scanning the page. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a window into her mind. Colors collided in bold, unapologetic ways. Lines intersected with intent, sometimes precise, sometimes chaotic, but always deliberate. He noticed tiny details, a small spaceship tucked into a corner, a pattern that looked almost like circuitry spiraling out of control. There was a sense of motion in the static image, a narrative unspoken yet impossible to ignore. A sudden crash behind him made him jump. A tray tipped, spilling juice onto the floor. Children gasped. Laughter followed immediately, blending with gasps, creating an unpredictable rhythm. He realized he had been holding his stance like a guardian, tense and calculating, ready to react. And then he noticed the subtle shift in her expression. A small, almost imperceptible frown. Concern? Fear? Perhaps both. He wanted to say something, but the words lodged in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded, tracing the spiraling lines of her drawing with his gaze. The cafeteria seemed to contract and expand around them, a breathing organism, and for a moment, it was just them, suspended in an impossible bubble of sound and color. She tilted her head. I made this for a project, but I wasn't sure if anyone would get it. Her voice trembled slightly at the edges, and Elon felt an unexpected pang. He had always been driven by results, by metrics, by the concrete and measurable, but here, in this noisy, chaotic, beautiful microcosm, there were no metrics, only intuition, observation, and subtle human resonance. He smiled. Not the practiced smile of a public figure, but the raw, genuine curvature of emotion. I get it, he said simply. And it was true. Every line, every color, every chaotic intersection spoke to him. Not as a test, not as a statement, but as a reflection of creativity, curiosity, and something profoundly human that he hadn't always allowed himself to notice. Outside the window, light shifted. A cloud passed, dimming the day just slightly. Shadows twisted across the linoleum like ink in water. Somewhere, a small mechanical whir echoed a ventilation fan or perhaps a forgotten toy, its rhythm oddly comforting, grounding. He felt the weight of that small, mundane detail more than anything else. A teacher called for attention, her voice bright and rhythmic, trying to corral the children into line. The noise level dropped momentarily, but Elon noticed subtle undercurrents. Whispered plans, secret gestures, the brief exchange of glances that revealed alliances, friendships, and tiny acts of rebellion. There was a pulse to the room, a beat, and he could feel it in his chest like a second heartbeat. Can I stay? She asked suddenly, her eyes wide, almost pleading. He blinked. The question was simple, yet it carried a gravity that surprised him. The thought of sitting here, among the ordinary and the extraordinary all at once, was something he hadn't considered. But the idea of leaving felt wrong. He nodded. Yeah, I'll stay. His voice barely rose above the din, yet it felt like a declaration, an acknowledgement of presence and participation in this small, vital world. She grinned, and it was fleeting but absolute, a flash of pure joy, unguarded and brilliant. He realized how little he had witnessed such moments in the rush of life, the spontaneous creation of happiness, the delicate calibration of small human interactions. It was raw, vulnerable, perfect in its imperfection. The day outside shifted again. A breeze stirred the leaves in the playground, causing them to scrape against the chain-link fence. The sound was almost musical, a subtle motif threading through the room unnoticed by most. Elon felt it reverberate inside him, a reminder that even in the chaos, patterns existed. Subtle, beautiful, telling stories if only one had the patience to notice. A small incident broke the reverie. A tray collided with the floor, juice spreading like a miniature flood. Children squealed and scattered, a cacophony punctuating the gentle hum of life around him. But he didn't flinch this time. He observed, noted, and smiled quietly. The imperfection was part of the rhythm, part of the narrative, part of the story he had only begun to witness. She leaned closer again, whispering conspiratorially. Sometimes I feel like no one notices the little things. Her words were so soft, yet they carried weight. Elon understood. He had spent a lifetime chasing monumental, global milestones. But it was the subtle, the small, the overlooked that shaped the human experience most profoundly. I notice, he whispered back. And he meant it. Each sound, each motion, each flicker of light, each breath and heartbeat. In this room it was all meaningful. The ordinary was extraordinary if one chose to see it. A sudden cheer erupted across the room as a group of children clapped for someone's achievement. A small trophy, a completed puzzle, a solved math problem. The sound ricocheted, bouncing off walls and ceilings in unpredictable echoes. He felt a strange swell in his chest, a mingling of pride, awe, and something else he couldn't quite name. Connection, perhaps, presence, humanity. Time seemed to fold again. The chatter faded to a background rhythm. Her small hand brushed against his again, and he realized he was no longer an outsider. He was a participant. He was present. He was here not as a figure of ambition, not as a symbol, not as a headline, but simply as a father, witnessing the intricate, chaotic beauty of his daughter's world. And in that moment, amidst the clatter of trays, the whisper of paper, the faint hum of machinery, and the soft rhythm of small human hearts, he was speechless not because he was amazed, but because he understood. He understood the fragile, fleeting, luminous brilliance of ordinary life. And he knew he would carry this understanding everywhere he went. Some truths arrive quietly, but their echo lasts forever. The bell rang, sharp and metallic, cutting through the cafeteria's lingering hum like a knife through fog. Children scrambled, their laughter and squeals folding into hurried footsteps and the soft scrape of shoes against polished linoleum. Elon remained seated, watching the chaos ripple outward. He could feel the residual vibration of the room, each heartbeat, each whispered conversation forming a delicate lattice of sound and meaning he hadn't noticed before. Her small hand remained in his, a tether between two worlds, hers, chaotic and vibrant, and his, deliberate and measured. She pulled him gently, urging him toward the hallway. The floor tiles were worn, each scuff and scratch carrying a story of years of footsteps, of children marching through, tiny dramas unfolding in loops of repetition. The hallway smelled faintly of crayons, disinfectant, and that indefinable scent of youth, sweet, fleeting, charged with possibility. "Wait," she whispered, and he paused instantly. She pressed herself against the wall, tiny shoulders braced, and her eyes darted toward the classroom doors. Through the small window, a scene unfolded that made his chest tighten. A boy, slightly older, hovered near the lockers, glancing around with something between suspicion and calculation in his posture. There was a subtle energy about him, light-footed, almost predatory. Elon noticed the faint scrape of his sneakers, the rhythmic tug of his backpack strap, the mechanical click of the locker locks as he adjusted them repeatedly. Every sound was deliberate, calculated, unnoticed by the others, but not by him. "Who's that?" Elon asked softly, more to himself than to her. "Sometimes he takes things," she admitted, a shadow passing across her expression. Her voice was barely audible, a tremor beneath the usual confidence she carried. "From lockers, or desks, no one really stops him." A small metallic click echoed again, this time closer, almost synchronized with the faint hum of a ventilation grate above. Elon's pulse sharpened. The sound was innocuous to most, but he recognized it as an environmental motif, a signature of tension. A warning, subtle but unmistakable. She tugged him forward, leading him into the classroom. The door closed softly behind them, muting the hallway noise but layering the interior with its own sonic complexity. The low murmur of teachers speaking, pencils scratching, papers shuffling, a fan turning in gentle oscillation. Each sound had depth, resonance, a hidden narrative that now seemed essential to decode. Her desk was cluttered, a mix of colored pencils, folded papers, tiny trinkets. She perched on the edge, legs swinging, eyes darting briefly to the classroom window where sunlight cut through blinds in uneven stripes. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams, tiny planets orbiting a world he was only beginning to notice. "I didn't know you'd come," she whispered again, almost a repetition, but now layered with a different weight. A subtle mix of pride, hesitation, and vulnerability. He leaned closer, voice steady. "I'm here, not as an observer, not as a distant presence, but here, fully present, grounded, attuned to every nuance." The teacher's voice interrupted briefly, assigning a reading task. Children bent over their books, and Elon noticed a rhythm in the pages turning. The slight exhale of concentration, the tiny shifts in posture. He realized that, even in this structured environment, the same energy, patterns persisted: curiosity, anxiety, anticipation. Life's micro-moments were fractals, infinite and intricate. A sudden tap, sharp, deliberate on the window, made both of them start. A paper airplane hovered, spinning gently before landing on her desk. Her eyes widened. "Not him, not yet," she muttered under her breath. Elon's gaze followed her line of sight. Outside, the boy from the hallway crouched behind a bush, watching. The air seemed to thrum with intention. There was a subtle but unmistakable antagonist motif. The scrape of gravel beneath his shoes, the faint sigh of a chain-link fence in the breeze, the low murmur of distant footsteps. It was as if the environment itself had conspired to announce his presence. She picked up the paper airplane, smoothing out the folds. Drawn on it was a crude sketch, a tiny rocket with wings, spiraling into a jagged star. Her small fingers trembled slightly as she handed it to Elon. He always tries to ruin the drawings. He thinks it's funny. Elon held it, turning it over, feeling the weight not of paper but of intention. The gesture was small, almost trivial, but he recognized the metaphor. Fragile creation under threat. Chaos, testing, resilience. His own mind traced back to every complex system he'd ever managed. Every fragile innovation, and suddenly this simple classroom drama mirrored those monumental challenges in an almost uncanny way. The clock ticked forward, each second layering a new microbeat in the room's rhythm. Pen scratching, soft coughs, chair legs nudging. Elon realized he was listening not just to the environment but to the undercurrents of human intent, reading subtle cues like binary code, shifts in posture, micro-expressions, breath patterns. He understood instinctively that vigilance here mattered, even in the smallest scale. Then a noise, a soft metallic click behind them. He froze. Her eyes widened, tiny pupils reflecting the fluorescent grid above. "He's close," she whispered. Movement outside the window confirmed it. The boy's shadow elongated across the playground. One hand clutched a small device, perhaps a tape dispenser, perhaps something else, and it shifted subtly with his movements. An echo of something larger, a precursor to mischief or disruption. Elon stood slowly, careful not to draw undue attention. He felt the low hum of tension coil around his spine, the subtle layering of threat beneath the ordinary classroom sounds. He had faced risk on massive scales, rockets, cars, software, but the stakes here were intimate, delicate, profoundly human. The calculus was different. Immediate, personal. "Stay here," he murmured, though her small hand still sought his. The classroom became a maze of sound. The subtle thump of shoes in distant hallways, the metallic click of lockers, the whisper of paper, a fan oscillating above. He moved toward the door, each step measured, attuned to microrhythms, anticipating disturbances, analyzing patterns. Outside, the boy froze, as if sensing movement. He tilted his head, scanning, then ducked behind a bench. Elon exhaled slowly. A soft, almost inaudible chuckle escaped the boy, a signature motif now etched in the air. A combination of bravado and threat, small but unmistakable. Returning to the desk, Elon crouched beside her. "You're safe," he said. The words were simple, but the weight of their promise resonated like a low hum threading through the room's ambient soundscape. She nodded, small relief flickering across her features, a brief brightening of energy in the subdued classroom rhythm. He noticed the little details now, the pencil balancing precariously on her notebook, the tiny smudge of eraser dust near her drawing, the subtle shift in sunlight across her papers. Each element became significant. A symbol, a piece of narrative, a small echo in the larger story he was only beginning to read. A loud laugh erupted. Suddenly one of the children had dropped a ruler. It clattered to the floor, bouncing against desks in an irregular rhythm. Elon smiled faintly. Chaos had its own music, and in it, patterns could be found if one listened carefully. She whispered, almost conspiratorially, "Do you think he will try again?" Elon considered it. "Maybe. But we'll notice first." His words were steady, measured, not because he was fearless, but because he had learned the value of observation, anticipation, and subtle intervention. In this microcosm, the stakes were not financial or technological, they were emotional, relational, profoundly human. The day pressed on. Children read, wrote, whispered, laughed. The boy lingered outside, a shadowy motif at the periphery of their awareness. Elon realized he had been holding tension as a tangible thing. A thin membrane stretched across the space, and now it subtly shifted, relaxing slightly with each passing moment of calm. Then, a sound, the faint buzz of a fly or maybe the vibration of a distant fan, something small, seemingly irrelevant, but in this heightened state, it was significant. His attention sharpened. He could almost see the underlying patterns of motion, the invisible connections that bound people and environment. Every microbeat, every subtle cue mattered. She leaned closer. "You understand, don't you?" Her voice trembled slightly, and for the first time, Elon felt the weight of responsibility, not as a challenge to solve, but as a narrative to honor. "I do," he said quietly. And he did. Outside, the shadow shifted again. The boy made a subtle gesture, imperceptible to anyone else, a flick of the wrist, the rotation of his hand. A signal? A threat? A challenge? Elon observed, calculated, and stored every detail, every beat, knowing that anticipation was as much a weapon as action. The classroom bell rang, signaling the end of the period. Children shuffled, gathered their things, moved toward the door. Elon stayed crouched, watching her small face light with the rhythm of motion and transition. He realized, with a quiet, profound awareness, that the true story was not just what had happened or what might happen, but what was unfolding, moment by moment, in these tiny, perfect, human microcosms. She looked up at him as they left the room, a mixture of wonder, pride, and a hint of mischief. "Promise me you'll notice the little things?" He smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I always notice," he heard her say, and for the first time in a long time, Elon understood the full cadence of attention, the layered symphony of ordinary life, the subtle rhythm of human connection, and the quiet power of being present. The boy outside was still there, a looming possibility, a micro-antagonist motif in their unfolding story. But for now, nothing could eclipse this precise, fragile, luminous moment of shared understanding. Danger often whispers, and only those who listen hear its song. The morning sun had shifted, spilling sharp, gold-edged light across the playground. Shadows stretched long, twisting around the swings and jungle gym like living ink. Elon's shoes scuffed lightly against the asphalt, each step deliberate, each microbeat in tune with the subtle rhythms of the schoolyard. He could hear the faint scrape of sneakers, the low murmur of children forming clusters, and something deeper, an undercurrent, soft but persistent, that whispered of mischief and challenge. She clung to his hand, small fingers tight, her heartbeat fluttering against his palm like a caged bird. He's here," she said, voice trembling, yet calm enough to slice through the ambient chaos. Her eyes darted, scanning the edges of the playground. And there he was, the boy, crouched behind a bench, an almost imperceptible smirk curving his lips, the glint of intent in his eyes. Elon's pulse synchronized with hers, a subtle echo of vigilance. The air was alive with layered sound, the soft squeak of a swing, the faint hum of the school's old AC, the distant caw of a crow circling overhead, the shuffle of children's feet against concrete. Each layer interwove, creating a tension-heavy tapestry. And somewhere in that lattice, the boy moved, a calculated, measured intrusion into the rhythm of ordinary life. "Watch," she whispered, pointing subtly. The boy had already deployed his small arsenal, a few stolen pencils, a bent ruler, a notebook whose corners were frayed like the edges of a warning. Each object, seemingly trivial, carried weight here, in her world, in this fragile ecosystem of childhood rules and hidden hierarchies. Elon knelt slightly, aligning his gaze with hers. He could see the subtle cues, the twitch of the boy's shoulder, the pause in his breathing, the deliberate drag of his sneaker across the asphalt. It was almost artistic, the choreography of small antagonism, but beneath it, there was real stakes, real tension, the quiet threat of disruption. "Don't look away," she murmured, her small voice urgent but controlled. He nodded. Observation was his weapon, anticipation his shield. The boy lunged, fast and precise, reaching for a notebook on the edge of a table where another child had left it unattended. The metallic click of his fingers brushing against the binder's clasp was audible only because Elon had tuned in. Time seemed to bend, stretching each heartbeat into clarity. He noted every micro-movement, the lean of the boy's torso, the subtle flick of his wrist, the almost imperceptible shift of his weight. Without thinking, Elon moved, not fast, not abrupt, but perfectly timed. His hand intercepted the boy's, gripping the notebook before it could be stolen. The boy froze, eyes widening, a subtle hitch in his breath. The faint scrape of concrete under sneakers became a percussion layer in Elon's auditory map of the moment. "Careful," Elon said softly. Not threatening, not punitive. Just calibrated, measured. His gaze met the boy's with quiet authority, the kind that commands attention without raising a voice. The boy hesitated, almost imperceptibly, then straightened, retreating a few steps, as if evaluating the boundaries of a new world. She exhaled softly beside him, relief threading through the tension. You stopped him." Her voice was small, reverent, and something in her tone reminded him that influence was often quiet, invisible, yet profound. But the threat was not gone. In the far corner of the playground, a small group of children watched, whispering, giggling, their energy a subtle chorus of anticipation. Elon felt the layered complexity of human systems again, the push and pull of alliances, the delicate negotiation of hierarchy, the ripple effects of every action. He knelt again, lowering his presence to her level. "Remember," he murmured, "it's not about stopping them forever. It's about seeing, noticing, and knowing how to act." His words were simple, almost banal in other contexts, but here they resonated like a soft chord threading through tension. She nodded, absorbing not just the strategy but the subtle philosophy woven into it. Life's challenges were both external and internal, visible and invisible. A bell rang, signaling a transition. Children moved in coordinated chaos toward the building. The boy lingered a moment longer, a shadow motif on the periphery, then slipped into the crowd. Elon noticed the faint twitch of his hand, the mechanical click of a locker slamming shut, the soft exhale of a child realizing small victory had passed. It was subtle, but it mattered. Patterns repeated, signals repeated, life repeated, but nothing was ever identical. Inside the classroom, Elon noticed a small detail: a pencil fallen from the desk, its tip broken, a tiny shard of graphite like a comet fragment frozen in space. It was meaningless to most, but to him, it was a signal of the day's micro-battles, the unseen struggles, the small disruptions that shaped this world. He picked it up carefully, turning it between his fingers. She watched, fascination flickering across her features. "You always notice," she said, voice soft, almost conspiratorial. "I try," he admitted, and in that simple statement was recognition, the awareness that attention was its own kind of care, that seeing the micro-world often mattered more than grand gestures. The teacher assigned a group activity, and Elon watched them integrate seamlessly, children negotiating tasks, roles shifting fluidly. The boy from before remained in sight, a peripheral antagonist motif now embedded in the story's texture rather than the central thread. Elon's awareness of subtle patterns, the sway of chairs, the whisper of paper, the soft tap of pencil tips, became almost meditative. Suddenly, a whisper. "Did you see that?" She pointed subtly to a small, nearly invisible streak of sunlight reflecting off a metal edge of a toy robot. The angle was strange, the reflection fleeting, but to her, it meant observation mattered, attention was key, and small anomalies held significance. Elon smiled faintly, understanding the meta-message. The world was full of micro-cues, subtle foreshadowing, and tiny signals that, if noticed, could shift outcomes profoundly. The boy attempted another move, this time toward her drawing, now displayed prominently on a corner of the desk. His fingers hovered, twitching, assessing. Elon's presence alone, calm, grounded, attuned, intercepted the gesture before contact was made. The mechanical click of a pencil box falling nearby, the faint shuffle of papers, the murmur of nearby children, all these details wove into the tension, an invisible web of observation and intervention. She whispered, almost incredulously, You see everything." "I see what matters," he corrected gently, and he meant it. Observation, attentiveness, subtle intervention, these were the tools of protection, understanding, and connection, not force, not spectacle, just presence. The school day progressed. Each transition hallway walks, snack time, teacher instructions brought new layers of sound, movement, and tension. Elon absorbed it all. The low hum of the heating system, the scrape of shoes against tile, the faint rustle of papers, the whispered plotting of small alliances. Every beat, every detail mattered. Outside, the boy lingered, a recurring shadow motif, observing, calculating, waiting. Elon's gaze followed him for a moment, noting posture, tension, subtle twitches of intention. Then he turned back to her, to the small, luminous world they were inhabiting together, and realized that some lessons were not taught, they were witnessed. Not imposed, they were absorbed. She leaned slightly, small head brushing his shoulder. Promise me. You'll notice even the smallest things, even when I'm not here. His foed. He smiled, the weight of the moment pressing softly, profoundly. I will, he said. And in that promise, he recognized the quiet power of presence, to observe, to protect, to understand, to love. The boy outside remained a latent threat, a motif that would recur, but for now, the story was about noticing, about engagement, about connection. A distant clap echoed from another classroom, a micro-victory, a ripple of joy, a subtle layer in the auditory landscape. Elon's chest swelled with understanding. Life's richness often existed in these small, overlooked triumphs. Each detail mattered, every interaction layered meaning, and the cumulative rhythm created something profound, unseen by those who failed to listen. She smiled up at him, a flash of brilliance, fleeting and exact. You really get it. I do, he said softly, letting the words linger. And he meant it more than any other truth he had encountered in years of building, leading, creating. For in this room, among small chairs, paper, pencils, and fragile human dramas, he had found something he had been searching for without knowing. The intricate, chaotic beauty of being fully present. The boy, lurking just beyond sight, was a reminder that tension never fully vanished, that observation and vigilance were eternal practices. But Elon understood now. Attention, presence, subtlety, and understanding could shape outcomes more powerfully than any overt force. In the quiet, in the mundane, in the small victories and small battles, life revealed its deepest truths. And as the shadows shifted with the sun, as the classroom buzzed with microbeats and minor triumphs, he realized he had witnessed something extraordinary not through spectacle or headline but through the small, luminous details of ordinary life, amplified by attention, shaped by care, and cemented by love. Some moments arrive like storms, quiet first, then impossible to ignore. The playground had emptied. The echoes of laughter and running footsteps faded into a low hum, punctuated by the metallic scrape of the swings swinging in the wind. Elon's eyes followed the shadows stretching across the asphalt, noticing every minor detail. A stray leaf caught in a grate, a crumpled paper at the edge of the sandbox, the faint glint of a lost pencil reflecting sunlight like a signal. Each small anomaly pulled at his attention, subtle threads in the fabric of the day's narrative. She clung to his hand as they approached the edge of the field. He's closer, she whispered, voice barely above the hum of distant activity. Her body tensed, shoulders rising, tiny muscles taut like strings under invisible pressure. Elon felt it, the micro-vibration of anxiety, the almost imperceptible energy of anticipation threading through her. He nodded, silent, absorbing it all. The world had become layered sound and movement. The distant clatter of playground equipment, the soft murmur of teachers organizing materials, the faint hiss of a sprinkler watering the far edge of the field, droplets landing with delicate percussion. Each sound carried weight, meaning, potential warning. From behind a small cluster of bushes, the boy emerged. He moved like a shadow, sculpted from intent, a predator in miniature, carefully watching, measuring, calculating. His backpack sagged slightly, unevenly, hinting at contraband or perhaps just signaling unease. Every minor movement, every tilt of the head, was a coded message. Elon read them all. Watch his hands, she muttered, small eyes sharp and focused. Elon followed the motion instinctively. One hand fiddled with a loose strap on his bag, the other hovered near a pencil box, the glint of metal catching sunlight. There was choreography here, small but precise, a sequence of mischief unfolding in real time. He recognized the tension between intention and environment, the delicate negotiation of presence, influence, and vigilance. Don't engage, Elon whispered, leaning slightly closer. Observe first. He could feel the subtle shift in her breathing, rapid and shallow, then smoothing into rhythm as she absorbed the strategy. Observation was power, awareness was defense, and in this delicate battlefield, they had both. The boy moved closer, sneakers brushing against gravel, a soft percussion barely audible over the ambient soundscape. He paused, tilted his head, then flicked a small notebook toward the sand. It landed silently, the paper catching on the edge of a stone like a subtle, deliberate signal. Elon's pulse quickened, not panic, but a sharp alertness. He could see the microbeats unfolding, the minor arcs of action that could cascade into bigger consequences if ignored. Her eyes met his. "He's trying to provoke me," she whispered. Elon knelt beside her, small hand resting on her shoulder. "Let him," he said softly. "We see. That's enough for now." His words were calm, firm, and imbued with the weight of experience. The world could be chaotic, disruptive, even aggressive, but attention and strategy turned chaos into information. The smallest acts, the quietest observations, became the most powerful weapons. These are 18. User HE. The boy crouched near a swing set, picking up a piece of gravel. The faint click of stone against concrete punctuated the air. He tossed it lightly, aiming not to harm, but to elicit reaction. A micro-challenge, the opening of a subtle duel. Elon's awareness sharpened, noticing the trajectory, the micro-sounds of shifting weight, the tension in the boy's jaw. "Ignore it," Elon repeated, this time louder, but still calm. His voice was a layer in the environment now, a motif of authority blending seamlessly with the ambient sound. She nodded, tiny shoulders squared, a mix of defiance and trust threading through her posture. A sudden gust of wind rustled through the nearby trees, carrying with it a flurry of dry leaves that danced across the asphalt like erratic punctuation marks. The boy's shadow flickered over the ground, elongating, shrinking, merging with the rhythm of the environment. Elon noticed the micro moments, the precise interplay of light, sound, motion. Each variable mattered. Then, almost imperceptibly, a new element entered the scene. A small metallic click, faint, rhythmic, almost drowned by the wind. Elon's head tilted, micromuscles on alert. It was not the boy, nor a child playing. It was external, subtle, layered into the auditory environment, a motif of tension he hadn't detected before. He leaned slightly, listening, feeling the subtext of the day shift around him. She watched him, a mix of curiosity and concern in her small eyes. "What is it?" "Something new," he murmured. "Pay attention." His voice was calm, grounding, but his mind raced, scanning the pattern, assessing risk, integrating signals. Observation now had multiple layers: the boy, the environment, the subtle external motifs. Each beat mattered. The boy's hand hovered over the pencil box again. Elon's subtle shift of movement, so slight it could be missed, intercepted potential mischief before it could escalate. The metallic click recurred, now a layered rhythm: wind, gravel, pencil box, the distant hum of HVAC, the external anomaly. The auditory world was a network, a map of tension and opportunity. Elon's awareness expanded to incorporate it all. She leaned in, whispering again, "He wants a reaction." "Then we won't give him one," Elon said, a subtle smile brushing his lips. He observed, waited, allowed the microbeats to cascade without forcing interference. Awareness alone was an intervention. Time stretched in these small moments. The wind shifted, scattering leaves further. A small bird landed nearby and hopped delicately, every feather detailed, every movement precise. The boy shifted too, almost mirroring the environment, testing boundaries, integrating signals, recalculating. Elon recognized the pattern: tension, anticipation, minor provocation. And in this microcosm, mastery was measured in restraint, perception, and timing. Then, a flash. Sunlight glinting off the metal clasp of the boy's backpack. A subtle, almost invisible flash, signaling perhaps mischief, perhaps a test. Elon's mind catalogued, stored, interpreted. He leaned closer, whispering, "Watch the reflections, the movements, the tiny signals. Everything tells a story." She nodded, a flash of comprehension lighting her face. Observation became shared practice, a language of microbeats, subtle signals, and attention. Together, they mapped the environment, anticipated intent, and diffused the smallest arcs of conflict before they escalated. Suddenly, the boy made a final gesture, a small flick of his hand, a challenge without words. Elon's eyes narrowed, pulse steady. He assessed, weighed, and decided. No confrontation, just calibrated presence. The gesture lost its power against awareness. The playground fell into an almost eerie quiet, broken only by ambient sounds, wind, leaves, distant laughter fading, metal glinting in sun, soft exhalations, a fan oscillating far away. Elon felt the tension dissipate slightly, replaced by the satisfaction of precise intervention. Small arcs of chaos had been observed, neutralized, or rendered inconsequential. The lesson subtle, profound, human had been communicated. She exhaled, small shoulders relaxing, and glanced up at him. "I think I understand," she whispered. "I don't need to react. I just notice." Elon smiled faintly, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. "Exactly. Seeing is power. Presence is protection. Attention is love." His words, simple yet resonant, threaded through the day's sonic tapestry, leaving traces, motifs, small arcs of understanding. The boy lingered, a shadow motif in the background, a reminder that vigilance was eternal. Elon noticed the faint twitch in his posture, the almost imperceptible click of a locker latch in the distance, the soft shuffle of shoes. Signals persisted, but their potency was reduced. Pattern recognized, micro-arc mitigated, narrative adjusted. As the sun shifted higher, shadows contracting and stretching across asphalt, Elon realized the lesson of the day. Human ecosystems, even microcosms like this playground, were governed by patterns, signals, and awareness. Observation, restraint, and timing were as essential as action. The smallest details, sounds, movements, gestures, carried profound meaning, and understanding them, teaching them, sharing them, created a depth of protection and connection that spectacle could never achieve. She looked up at him once more, small face radiant with comprehension. "I think I'm ready," she said. He nodded, a quiet satisfaction threading through his chest. Ready not just for the boy, not just for mischief, but for life, for the subtle rhythms, the microbeats, the layered narratives that shaped her world. Attention, presence, awareness, these were the tools she now carried. Subtle, invisible, profoundly powerful. Outside, the wind stirred again, carrying leaves, whispers, metallic echoes, small sounds of the environment blending into a soft, layered symphony. The boy faded into the distance, a motif reserved for the next arc, the next micro-challenge. And Elon knew, in the quiet clarity of this day, that presence, understanding, and careful attention had created a sanctuary, a small but inviolable world of safety, learning, and connection. She squeezed his hand. Small fingers, firm, eyes bright. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll always notice," he replied softly. And in that promise, made in the subtle light of ordinary life, he recognized a deeper truth. Attention is not just observation, it is commitment, love, and the quiet art of shaping the world without breaking it. The sun fell toward the horizon, painting long gold streaks across the field. Shadows and light danced together, a cinematic motif echoing the lessons of the day, microbeats, subtle signals, presence, and awareness. Elon watched, fully present, attuned to every minor detail, knowing that life, in all its complexity, would always reward those who saw, listened, and acted with quiet precision. Some truths arrived suddenly, breaking the calm like lightning over still water. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and crayons, a sterile backdrop layered with the subtle hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Elon's footsteps were soft, careful, yet deliberate, each one a pulse in the complex rhythm of the school's undercurrent. She walked beside him, small hand in his, heartbeat synchronized, eyes alert. The boy from the playground lingered on the periphery, a shadow motif, threading tension through the scene. They approached the cafeteria, its doors yawning wide, revealing a sea of movement. Children navigating trays, whispers cascading in waves, the metallic clatter of cutlery punctuating the ambient hum. Elon scanned the environment instantly. Micro beats, layers of sound, gestures, alliances. Every small shift could be a clue, a threat, or a lesson. She's nervous, Elon murmured, noting the slight hitch in her exhale, the trembling of her small fingers around his hand. The boy noticed too, crouched behind a column, small eyes glinting, studying, calculating. You ready? He whispered. Not to her, but to himself. A reminder that readiness was awareness, and awareness was power. Inside, children clustered around tables. Trays shifted. Chatter pulsed. A symphony of tiny arcs unfolding simultaneously. Elon's gaze flicked to her, her choices, gestures, micro-reactions. The boy's approach was subtle, weaving through clusters like a predator mapping opportunity. A metallic click, pencil against tray, faint, yet purposeful. He paused. Time dilated. Every movement, every sound, amplified in Elon's perception. A spoon rattled against a tray, chairs scraped, a napkin twitched as if alive. The boy's eyes found her, fixed, calculating. Intent radiated, unspoken, as palpable as wind before a storm. Watch him, she whispered, small voice tight with tension. He did. Observation became their shield. Elon noted everything. The slight lean forward, the almost imperceptible twitch of his hand, the glint of a metal fork in the boy's grasp. Patterns repeated, microbeats stacked, environment shifted subtly, all forming a narrative only the attentive could read. The boy lunged not violently, but with precise intention toward a tray where her lunch sat. He tried to topple it, a minor chaos test. Elon's hand intercepted, not fast, not forceful, but perfectly timed. The tray wobbled, a microbeat of tension, then steadied. The ambient sounds, forks, chairs, soft whispers shifted, layered differently, motif altered. Careful, Elon murmured, the voice low, calm, unyielding. His eyes met the boy's briefly, silently conveying authority. The boy froze, then retreated a step, evaluating, recalculating. She exhaled softly, relief threading through her small body. You stopped him, she whispered, a mixture of awe and understanding. Elon nodded, leaning slightly closer. Observation first, he said. Everything else follows. His voice was soft, almost invisible in the cafeteria's hum, yet it carried weight, an invisible directive, threaded into the micro-arcs of behavior surrounding them. The boy lingered, still a motif in the periphery, adjusting posture, testing limits. Elon tracked him, subtle shifts in weight, the mechanical click of a tray leg adjusting, the rustle of a sleeve, the faint glint of sunlight against a clasp. Signals layered over signals, tension building in microbeats, an invisible narrative unfolding across the room. Then, a small incident, a spilled cup of juice, tipping silently, liquid sliding over the tray's edge. Elon noted it instantly. The boy's attention flickered, assessing whether to escalate. But Elon's calm presence and precise intervention created a counterwave. The juice was contained, disruption minimized, chaos averted not by force, but by awareness. She looked up at him, eyes bright. I think I understand, she whispered. Observation, patience, awareness, these were the tools she had absorbed, now applied instinctively. The boy's smirk shifted, a subtle change in micro-expression, frustration, curiosity, a minor arc of recalibration. He moved toward another table, a secondary motif weaving into the narrative, testing boundaries elsewhere. Elon noted it, storing each microbeat, each subtle intention in his mental map. Life, Elon murmured softly, almost to himself, is a sequence of micro-arcs, of patterns, of unseen forces. Quoted, when we are least, yes, unseen, unforces. Awareness lets you navigate, anticipate, and protect without unnecessary confrontation. Thank you for watching. One see you in that Rios, to the 1919 for though, and that slash, to and I. She nodded, small face lighting with comprehension. So, noticing is enough? For now, he said, voice calm, grounded. Sometimes, noticing is everything. The cafeteria shifted rhythm. Children laughed, chairs scraped, trays clattered, whispers layered with ambient hum. Elon's attention moved fluidly across the room. Minor gestures, small arcs of potential conflict, motifs of intention. Observation was a living, breathing act. Actually, as each detail mattered, each layer interwove into a pattern of order amid potential chaos. The boy approached her table again, subtle but deliberate, hand reaching not for mischief this time, but curiosity a test. Elon adjusted slightly. A micro shift in posture, presence, creating an invisible boundary. The boy paused, eyes narrowing, then withdrew. Observation alone had altered behavior, a lesson invisible but effective. She exhaled, shoulders relaxing, small fingers squeezing his hand. It's different, she whispered. I don't feel scared. You never were, Elon corrected softly. You just needed to see it for yourself. Presence, patience, understanding, these were the threads weaving her growth. The metallic click recurred from the periphery, a subtle, layered motif signaling a distant, almost unseen layer of potential threat. Elon's head tilted, micro-muscles attuned, integrating signals, recalibrating patterns. The cafeteria became a dynamic field of micro-arcs, movement, sound, gesture, intention. He mapped it all, observing, anticipating, silently directing outcomes without overt interference. She leaned slightly closer. Will he keep trying? Elon nodded. Yes. But every attempt is now part of your map. You notice, you adjust, you control your response. That's power. His voice was soft, layered with experience, authority, and care. A bell rang, signaling a transition. Children moved with coordinated chaos, laughter blending with movement, metallic clatter, whispers, and environmental hum. The boy lingered, a recurring shadow motif, observing, calculating, integrating patterns. Elon's awareness followed him, noting posture, gestures, and subtle signals. The narrative threads of tension and learning continued to weave together. She squeezed his hand again, small but firm. I think I'm ready for anything now, she said. Confidence mingled with newfound calm, a delicate transformation shaped by microbeats, presence, and attentive guidance. Elon nodded, heart threading through quiet satisfaction. The day's arcs, small, micro, seemingly trivial, had culminated in this awareness, resilience, understanding. Observation had shaped outcomes, teaching not through force but through presence, perception, and subtle influence. The boy, now in the distance, adjusted his posture. Micro arcs of future challenge encoded in subtle movements, glances, and gestures. He remained a motif, a shadow echoing the layered complexity of life and human interaction. But the immediate arc, the small, luminous world of presence, observation, and connection was theirs. Outside, sunlight streamed through the cafeteria windows, casting long gold shadows across trays, chairs, and linoleum. The environment itself became a visual symphony, microbeats of light and shadow, subtle cues, motifs repeating and shifting. Elon noted it, absorbing patterns, seeing life unfold, not just in grand gestures, but in subtle, layered signals. She looked up at him one final time as they walked toward the exit. Thank you, she whispered. Not for stopping the boy, not for intervention, but for teaching the invisible lesson. Presence, attention, and awareness mattered more than spectacle. I'll always notice, he replied softly. And in that promise was more than protection. It was commitment, love, and the quiet art of shaping the world without breaking it. The boy remained on the periphery, a shadow motif waiting for future microarcs. But Elon had imparted something deeper, the ability to see, to anticipate, to navigate life's subtle tensions with awareness and presence. Small victories, small arcs, layered observations, they had built a foundation that no mischief could easily unsettle. The hallway stretched ahead, light shifting, microbeats of movement and sound threading through the day. Elon and his daughter walked together, present, attuned, quietly powerful in the invisible rhythm they now shared. Observation had become a shield, presence a weapon, and attention a bridge between safety, understanding, and connection. And as they stepped outside, sunlight warming their faces, wind stirring leaves in delicate arcs, the day's narrative continued, a layered, living story of microbeats, subtle signals, and the quiet power of noticing, presence, and love. Some lessons arrive quietly, then hit harder than any storm could. The corridors smelled faintly of chalk, polished floors reflecting fluorescent light in long, pale streaks. Elon's footsteps were measured, a subtle rhythm in the complex acoustic web of the school. She walked beside him, small hand in his, shoulder brushing against his, sharing an invisible cadence of presence. The boy from the cafeteria lingered near the lockers, a recurring shadow motif threading tension through the scene. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, eyes scanning the subtle shifts in the environment, micro arcs of movement, gestures, the faint rustle of backpacks. Elon nodded. "Tension has layers," he said softly. "Not everything is visible at first glance. Some signals are only heard, some only felt." His words, quiet and deliberate, became a motif, themselves an auditory marker, threading calm into the surrounding chaos. From the far end, a faint metallic click echoed. He tilted his head slightly. The sound was almost imperceptible, masked by lockers slamming, footsteps, and whispers. Yet Elon recognized it immediately, a subtle echo of intent. The boy's shadow had shifted, weight slightly uneven, one hand brushing a locker latch. Microbeats of behavior layered over environmental motifs. Observation was now the only tool, the only shield. She glanced up at him. "Should we stop him?" Elon shook his head, leaning slightly closer. "Observation first. Reacting too early gives him control." His eyes scanned the microarcs. A teacher walking past, a cluster of students laughing, a faint glimmer of sunlight catching the edge of a metal locker. Every detail mattered. The boy moved, a calculated rhythm, like a predator testing gaps in attention. He nudged a backpack slightly, the contents shifting with a metallic clink. A pen rolled to the floor. Elon noticed, already mapping intention. The environment responded, a whisper of wind from a cracked window, a faint hum of the heating system, a chair scraping the linoleum. Each sound layered into the narrative, each movement a thread in the unfolding tension. "See it?" she whispered. Her small eyes were sharp, focused, already tracing patterns, microbeats of movement and intent. "I see it," he replied. Presence, awareness, micro-observation. They were training her not just for conflict, but for comprehension. The boy's gestures, his subtle attempts at disruption, became part of a larger system she could now interpret. Knowledge replaced fear. Suddenly, the boy reached for a stack of worksheets near the end of a hallway. His fingers hovered over the paper, trembling with minor anticipation. Elon leaned slightly, hands subtly in front, not touching, just occupying space, presence creating invisible influence. The boy paused. Microarcs shifted, tension diffused, the metallic click echoing once more as he withdrew. She exhaled, a small smile threading through anxiety. I think I could handle that," she whispered. Awareness had become armor. Presence had become defense. Observation had become understanding. Elon nodded. "And that's just the start. Each signal you notice, each rhythm you understand, adds to your control." The hallway around them pulsed with life. Lockers clanging, footsteps, whispers, soft, mechanical hums. He absorbed it all, cataloging minor arcs, tracking intentions, layering motifs. The boy lingered, a shadow motif observing from a distance, micro arcs recalibrating. Elon noted the twitch in his posture, the faint adjustment of a sleeve, the almost imperceptible glance toward the exit. Signals layered over signals, awareness layered over awareness. The narrative became a living organism, dynamic and responsive. "Every move tells a story," Elon whispered to her. "Even small gestures, even the quietest sounds, they all communicate. You just need to learn the language." She tilted her head, processing, small brow furrowing in concentration. "So, noticing isn't just seeing? It's understanding?" "Exactly," he said softly. Observation was comprehension. Comprehension was preparation. Preparation was presence. They had created a subtle, invisible ecosystem of control, without force, without confrontation, only awareness and presence. A sudden sound, a locker door slamming sharply, punctuated the quiet. Microarcs shifted, The boy's head snapped toward the sound. Small body tensing, posture recalibrating. Elon noticed the pattern of his reactions. Testing boundaries, probing attention, seeking influence. Each beat was now predictable, mappable, manageable. She squeezed his hand. I don't feel scared anymore, she said, eyes bright with a mix of pride and wonder. You weren't, he corrected softly. You just hadn't seen it yet. Now you do. And that changes everything. Presence, observation, awareness, these were no longer abstract lessons. They were tools, ready for real-time application. The boy, now in motion again, shifted his approach, subtle but deliberate. Elon adjusted slightly, micro-movement of his own presence, creating a counterbalance. Every subtle gesture, every minor shift in stance, every microbeat of breath became part of a layered dialogue between observer and actor. Control had become invisible, yet absolute. She followed his subtle cues, small body synchronized with his awareness, eyes scanning patterns, ears tuned to layered sounds, the metallic click of a locker, the shuffle of shoes, the faint hum of distant machinery. Observation had become instinct, instinct had become empowerment. Suddenly, a cascade. A backpack tipped slightly, pens rolling, a chair scraping against linoleum. Micro arcs collided, tension layered over tension. Elon moved, not fast, not forceful, just precise. The cascade resolved, chaos mitigated, without confrontation. She watched, eyes wide, comprehension deepening. Awareness alone had directed outcomes. See how it works? Elon whispered. You don't need to fight. You guide, you observe, you influence. The boy froze, paused, glancing toward them. He hesitated. Microarcs recalibrating. Shadow motif assessing new conditions. Presence had shifted dynamics. Observation had created invisible boundaries. Awareness had rewritten intent. She exhaled slowly, small shoulders relaxing. I get it now, she whispered. I can see the story before it happens. Yes, Elon said softly. And that's the power. Not fear, not force, not reaction. Understanding, awareness, presence. Each word echoed subtly through the corridor, layering into the ambient motif of calm control and microbeat mastery. The boy, now at a distance, shifted again. His shadow stretched across lockers, his microarcs adjusting. Elon watched, cataloging, observing, anticipating. He was still present, still a motif, still part of the layered narrative, but the immediate tension, the micro-conflict, had been neutralized through awareness. Observation had rebalanced the scales. She looked up at him, small face, radiant with understanding. Thank you, she whispered. Not for intervention, not for confrontation, but for teaching her the invisible art of control, the subtle power of observation and presence. I'll always notice, he replied softly. And in that promise was more than protection, it was guidance, mentorship, love. Observation had become armor, presence had become influence, awareness had become freedom. The corridor stretched ahead, sunlight from high windows cutting long, shifting lines across linoleum, microbeats of movement, sound, and intention layered seamlessly. Footsteps, whispers, metallic clicks, ambient hums. Each detail mattered, each motif carried weight, each micro-arc revealed a story waiting to be read. She walked beside him, small hand in his, shoulder brushing against his, eyes wide, awareness sharp. The boy remained in the periphery, a shadow motif threading the narrative with tension yet to be fully realized. But the immediate arcs, the lessons, the understanding, the empowerment were theirs. Outside, sunlight danced across the playground, leaves shifting with the wind, metallic glints catching eyes, faint echoes of distant laughter threading into the environment. Observation had shaped outcomes, awareness had mitigated chaos, presence had created calm. Micro-arcs, subtle signals, layered narratives, they had learned to navigate life's complexities with precision, quiet strength, and understanding. And as they stepped into the golden afternoon light, Elon realized control did not require force, guidance did not demand dominance, and love did not need dramatics. Awareness, observation, presence. These were the invisible forces shaping lives, guiding growth, and cultivating resilience. She squeezed his hand once more, eyes bright with comprehension and trust. "I think I can do this," she whispered. "Yes," he replied. "And you already are." Presence, attention, microbeats, they had become her silent allies. The day's lessons were now permanent motifs, woven into her understanding, ready to guide her through every shadow, every ripple, every micro-arc yet to come. The boy lingered at the edge of the playground, a motif of potential challenge, recalibrating patterns, watching, waiting. But their immediate world, structured, resilient, observant, was intact. Awareness had triumphed over instinctive conflict, observation over impulse, presence over fear. The sun fell toward the horizon, painting shadows long and golden across asphalt and grass. Elon and his daughter walked together, steps synchronized, eyes scanning, ears tuned, presence absolute. The narrative of the day, micro-arcs, subtle signals, layered tension, and quiet mastery stretched behind them like a living map, guiding the path forward. And as the light faded, leaving the playground in a soft dusk glow, Elon knew the truth. Power was silent. Influence was subtle. Awareness was everything. Presence was the gift he had given her, invisible yet indelible, shaping her world, shaping her understanding, and shaping her future. Some shadows grow quietly, then reveal themselves in a sudden, undeniable strike. The late afternoon sun cast long, fractured shadows across the school playground, each beam slicing through the air like liquid gold. Elon's eyes scanned the environment with practiced precision, noting the subtle micro-arcs of movement. A loose shoelace, dragging against asphalt, the faint sway of a swing in the distance, a paper fluttering across the yard. Presence was alive, vibrating across the ambient field. She walked beside him, hand clasped firmly in his, small fingers warmed by his steady grip. Her awareness had sharpened over weeks of observation, microbeats of past lessons embedded into instinct. The boy from earlier lingered near the far edge of the playground, a dark motif in motion, recalibrating, testing thresholds. "Some things different," she whispered, voice almost lost in the gentle rustle of leaves. Her eyes tracked his every micro-movement. Elon nodded, subtle tension threading through his stance. "He's testing more than just you now," he said softly. "He's testing the environment, the rules, the invisible lines we drew." His words were calm, deliberate, a stabilizing pulse against the underlying tension. From the distance, the metallic click recurred, a motif signaling intent. Elon's head tilted, micro-muscles flexing, absorbing layered signals. The boy's posture, the subtle sway of his shoulders, a shadow crossing the playground fence. Observation alone revealed the narrative before action occurred. The boy approached a cluster of benches where younger children were playing. His movements were precise, but subtle, slight nudges, small gestures, a flicker of intent in every micro-arc. Elon's gaze followed, noting every layered action, mapping the invisible network of potential disruption. She leaned slightly closer, small voice whispering, "What do we do now?" Elon exhaled quietly, scanning. "Not yet. Observe. Let the pattern reveal itself." Awareness had become their tool, intervention, their final step. Presence created invisible boundaries that were already shaping behavior, even if subtly. The boy circled, probing gaps, shifting attention, testing patience. A backpack tipped slightly, pens rolling across the asphalt, a soft metallic glint catching Elon's eye. His presence shifted imperceptibly, a micro-arc adjustment, an invisible assertion of influence. The boy paused, recalibrating. Observation had already rewritten intent. "Do you see it?" Elon whispered. Her small eyes were wide, tracking microbeats, the slight hesitation, the subtle recalibration, the faint shadow cues. Comprehension flashed across her face, understanding the story before it fully unfolds. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A startled child tripped, laughter turning to alarm, a backpack spilling across the ground. Micro-arcs collided, layering tension across the playground. Elon moved, not forcefully, but precisely, his subtle presence steering the narrative, directing children away, nudging motion, aligning arcs. Awareness orchestrated outcomes without confrontation. The boy froze, a shadow motif observing, recalibrating microarcs in real time. His intent lingered, tangible, almost tactile, in the ambient field of tension. Elon's gaze met his, subtle but unyielding, a silent negotiation, a reminder that presence, not force, held authority. She exhaled softly, shoulders easing. "I think I can handle this," she whispered. Observation had become instinct, awareness, armor, presence, the guiding shield. Elon nodded. "Yes. But this is only the beginning. The real test is consistency. The microarcs, the subtle signals, they never stop. Life is constant observation." Each word layered into the ambient field, creating invisible motifs, threading through environment, shadow, and motion. The boy adjusted, moving toward a sandbox, subtle yet deliberate. Elon's micro-adjustments of posture, slight shifts of weight, and presence subtly redirected his trajectory. Influence, quiet but absolute, shifted the narrative. A metallic click, faint but sharp, echoed from the fence, a motif repeated, signaling potential escalation. Elon noted it instantly. Shadow motifs were layering, testing boundaries, probing limits. Observation was no longer passive. It had become a tool for preemptive shaping of behavior. "Notice the rhythm," Elon whispered. "Every gesture, every breath, every small sound tells a story. Read it, and you control what happens next." With Chrysler's in the way, her eyes widened, small body attuned to the layered microarcs. The boy's subtle sway, the faint glint of sunlight on a swing chain, the distant rustle of leaves signaling motion, the microbeat of a skipping child's laughter. Observation was now comprehension. Comprehension became influence, influence became presence. The boy shifted again, a subtle but deliberate test. He nudged a small ball toward the sandbox, the motion almost imperceptible. Elon's presence shifted, minute but deliberate, and the trajectory was subtly redirected, a micro-intervention, invisible yet effective. Awareness alone had changed outcomes without direct contact. She watched, eyes bright with comprehension. "It's like I can see the story before it happens," she whispered. Patterns, microarcs, motifs, they were all legible now, a living narrative unfolding in real time. "Yes," Elon replied softly, "and that's the power. Observation shapes reality. Presence influences outcome. So, we have some way, Meeden. We have some way. Awareness is everything." He scanned the playground again. Children laughing, chairs shifting, shadows stretching across asphalt, metallic clicks punctuating the ambient hum. Every micro-arc now layered seamlessly into the narrative of control and comprehension. Suddenly, the boy made a bold move, reaching toward another child's backpack, intent clear, gestures sharp. Elon exhaled quietly, micro-muscles flexing, adjusting presence, subtly shaping motion. The boy paused, hesitation layering over intent, a microbeat of uncertainty. Presence, not force, dictated the flow. She squeezed his hand, confidence threading through small fingers. "I think I can handle this," she whispered again, determination sharpening her tone. Observation had become instinct, awareness, armor, presence, a guiding shield. The boy, a shadow motif, lingered at the sandbox edge, recalibrating, evaluating. Elon noted the subtle microarcs, slight shifts in weight, the flick of a sleeve, the small adjustment of head, signals layered over signals, a complex narrative emerging. Awareness became strategy, observation became guidance, presence became control. "Every microbeat matters," Elon whispered. "Every small motion, every sound, every gesture contributes to the story. Read it, and you guide it." She nodded, small eyes bright with comprehension. I understand now." Awareness had transformed fear into understanding, uncertainty into control. She could anticipate, influence, and adapt. The boy made one last attempt, subtle but deliberate, a minor nudge toward a toy truck. Elon's presence shifted, the micro-arc of his subtle weight adjustment, influencing trajectory, outcome, corrected without contact. The boy froze, recalibrating, understanding he could not dictate the narrative without consequence. She exhaled, shoulders relaxing. I did it, she whispered, small smile threading through relief and pride. Observation, awareness, and presence had worked as intended empowerment without confrontation. Elon nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Yes, and that's the lesson. Awareness first, action second, influence always subtle but absolute. Presence, observation, awareness threads woven into a quiet, powerful narrative shaping behavior and outcomes without force. The boy finally stepped back, shadow motif retreating, micro arcs recalibrating for future attempts. Elon's gaze followed him briefly, noting posture, intent, and subtle cues. The narrative of tension had shifted. Presence had guided outcomes. Observation had won without confrontation. She looked up at him, small face radiant. Thank you, she whispered. Not for stopping him, not for intervention, but for teaching the invisible art of understanding, awareness, and presence. I'll always notice, Elon replied softly. In that promise was more than protection, it was guidance, mentorship, and the quiet, invisible shaping of understanding. Observation had become instinct, awareness had become armor, presence had become influence. The playground stretched ahead, light fading into dusk, shadows long and golden across asphalt and grass. Micro arcs, subtle signals, layered narratives, each detail mattered, each movement communicated, each motif influenced outcomes. They had learned the invisible language of observation, the quiet power of presence, the art of reading life before it fully unfolded. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long amber shadows across the yard, Elon realized the truth. Control was invisible. Influence was subtle. Awareness was everything. Presence was the gift he had given her, permanent, indelible, guiding her through every shadow, every ripple, every microarc yet to come. She squeezed his hand once more, eyes bright with comprehension and trust. I think I'm ready for anything, she whispered. Yes, he replied, and you already are. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, they were no longer lessons. They were tools, companions, and silent guardians, guiding her through life's intricate, layered narrative. The boy lingered at the edge, a shadow motif waiting for the next microarc, recalibrating patterns, watching, waiting. But their immediate world, structured, resilient, observant, remained intact. Awareness had triumphed over impulse, observation over intent, presence over fear. As twilight embraced the playground, Elon and his daughter walked together, steps synchronized, awareness aligned, presence absolute. The narrative of the day, microarcs, layered signals, tension, and subtle mastery stretched behind them like an invisible map, guiding every step forward. And as darkness softened the edges of the world, Elon knew, some battles are won not with confrontation, but with attention. Some victories are invisible, yet indelible. Awareness is power, presence is influence, observation is mastery. Some lessons wait until the world itself becomes the test. The evening air was heavy with the scent of rain yet to fall, metallic and sharp, pressing against skin and consciousness alike. Elon and his daughter walked along the sidewalk, the city around them alive with microarcs of motion, car engines, humming distant rhythms, a flickering neon sign reflecting off wet pavement, the faint scrape of shoes on concrete. Presence had become their constant, subtle, silent language. She clutched his hand tightly, small fingers threading through his. Her awareness had evolved through weeks of layered, microbeat training, each shadow, each subtle gesture now readable. Yet this world, bigger, louder, more unpredictable, was an entirely new narrative. Do you hear that? She whispered, eyes scanning the patterns of light and sound. A faint metallic hum pulsed from an alleyway, almost imperceptible beneath the city's larger chorus. Microarcs converged. Shadows, light, sound, movement, each telling its own story. Elon nodded subtly. Yes, and it's significant. His voice carried a calm that threaded through the ambient chaos, an auditory motif marking focus and intention. But remember, presence matters more than reaction. Observation first. The alley was narrow, slick with rainwater, shadows pooling into pockets that shifted as distant headlights passed. Microbeats danced across the space. A distant cat, the faint flick of a plastic bag, the shuffle of a man adjusting his coat, each sound layered into the environment, an invisible narrative thread. She leaned close. Do we follow it? Elon shook his head gently. Not yet. Let the pattern reveal itself. Watch. Listen. Feel. Awareness had become armor, comprehension, influence. Action would come only once the narrative aligned. From the shadows, a new figure emerged, a dark motif layered over the ambient tension. Small but deliberate gestures, the slight adjustment of gloves, the subtle tilt of a hood, a rhythmic tapping on a metallic surface revealed intent before words or action. Elon catalogued every microarc, subtle signals threading a story she could now read. Her eyes widened. It's him? Possibly, Elon whispered. But don't let labels distract you. Observe the pattern first. The figure moved, shadow arcs shifting, faint metallic clicks punctuating motion. Elon adjusted his micropresence, a subtle shift of weight and shoulder creating invisible influence over environmental rhythm. The figure hesitated, almost imperceptibly, recalibrating their movements. Observation had already reshaped outcomes. She exhaled slowly, shoulders tightening, then easing. I think I can read him. Microarcs, subtle gestures, sound cues, they were all legible now, each telling a fragment of narrative intent. Yes, Elon replied softly. The story is in the details. Watch, listen, and understand. Each microbeat is a word in the sentence of reality. The figure advanced further, stepping into a dim pool of neon light. Motion arcs revealed subtle rehearsal. A shift of weight forward, fingers brushing a metal railing, a slight exhale audible in the stillness. Elon catalogued it all, embedding patterns into memory, subtle guidance shaping awareness without interference. Suddenly, the figure made a bold move, reaching toward a fire hydrant, twisting slightly, intent evident. Elon's presence adjusted, micro muscles flexing, subtle shifts of weight redirecting narrative motion. The figure froze, hesitation layered over intent, the microbeat of uncertainty threading tension through the environment. She whispered, small voice taut with concentration, I see the rhythm. I know what he wants. Observation had become instinct, awareness, armor, presence the guiding shield. Elon nodded. Good. Now understand the consequence. Every action has a counterweight. His eyes swept the surrounding environment, shadows pooling in corners, reflections of neon on puddles, distant traffic, the rustle of leaves in hidden alleys. All layers combined to create an ambient map, each microbeat communicating narrative truth. The figure reached again, subtle yet deliberate. Elon's presence shifted imperceptibly, a micro-arc adjustment influencing trajectory. The twist of intent collided with awareness, action deflected without force. Observation had guided outcomes before chaos could manifest. She exhaled, small smile, threading through tension. I think I'm controlling it, she whispered. Awareness had become influence, influence had become presence, presence had become empowerment. Elon's eyes softened. You already are. But remember, the stakes rise when patterns break. That's when observation must be sharper, awareness faster, presence more absolute. The figure's shadow motif lingered at the edge of perception, microarcs poised for escalation, testing limits. A sudden noise, a metallic clang from a nearby dumpster shattered stillness. Microarcs collided, figure's head snapped toward the sound, motion recalibrating, shadow flickering across walls. Elon's presence rippled subtly, redirecting tension, guiding narrative arcs without direct confrontation. She tightened her grip. He's trying to trick me, she whispered. He wants me to act too soon. Microarcs, subtle cues, shadow motifs, every fragment of intent was legible, waiting for comprehension. Yes, Elon said, and you resist. Observation first, influence second, reaction only when story aligns. Presence had become their silent shield, awareness their tool, comprehension their weapon. The figure shifted again, microarcs threading tension across the alley. Elon adjusted posture, subtle realignment of weight, breathing, and focus influencing outcome. The figure froze, hesitation threading through motion, a subtle acknowledgement of invisible boundaries. Observation had already dictated the narrative. She whispered, eyes bright, small body attuned. I know what will happen next. Prediction layered over comprehension, microbeats of narrative aligned. Awareness had become foresight, presence had become authority, observation had become mastery. The figure made one last attempt, reaching toward a discarded crate. Elon's presence shifted, subtle micro-arc adjustments influencing trajectory, outcomes controlled without direct engagement. Hesitation rippled through the shadow motif, tension diffused by invisible influence. She exhaled slowly, relief and pride threading through her tone. "I did it," she whispered. Observation, awareness, and presence had shaped the narrative. The external world had been read, interpreted, and guided with precision. Elon smiled faintly, pride threading through measured calm. "Yes, and that's the lesson. Control is invisible. Influence is subtle. Awareness is everything. Presence shapes reality. Micro-arcs, subtle motifs, layered narratives. The invisible language of observation had become a tangible, powerful force. The figure lingered in the shadows, a motif still present, micro-arcs recalibrating for future attempts, but the immediate conflict had resolved without chaos. Awareness had guided action, observation had informed control, presence had asserted influence. She looked up at him, eyes radiant. Not for intervention, but for teaching her how to see the story before it happened, how to shape outcomes without force, how to navigate complexity with calm and comprehension. "I'll always notice," Elon replied softly. A promise not of protection, but of mentorship, guidance, and the invisible structuring of understanding. Presence, observation, and awareness had become their silent companions, shaping every microbeat of reality around them. The city stretched ahead, lights flickering, shadows dancing across wet pavement, distant hums of traffic, faint echoes of footsteps. Micro-arcs, subtle signals, layered narratives. Each detail mattered, each movement communicated, each motif influenced outcomes. The lessons of the school now extended to the streets, the environment, the living, breathing world, beyond controlled spaces. And as night deepened, neon reflecting across puddles, Elon realized, some battles are invisible. Some victories require no confrontation. Observation is power. Awareness is influence. Presence is mastery. She squeezed his hand, eyes bright with comprehension and trust. "I think I'm ready for anything now," she whispered. "Yes," he replied softly. "And you already are." Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, they were tools, companions, guardians. Not just lessons, but ways of moving through the world with clarity, foresight, and calm strength. The figure receded into shadow, motif recalibrating for future arcs. Elon and his daughter continued walking, steps synchronized, awareness aligned, presence absolute. The narrative of the evening microarcs, layered signals, tension, and subtle mastery stretched behind them, guiding every step forward. Twilight embraced the streets, shadows pooling long and soft. Elon knew the world itself had become the test, and through observation, presence, and awareness, they had already begun to master it. Some confrontations are silent, yet their weight presses harder than any storm. The streets had darkened into a quiet tension, neon reflections fragmented across wet asphalt. Elon's daughter stayed close, small hand tight in his. Micro-arcs of motion traced through the city, distant footsteps, flickering streetlights, a soft metallic echo that threaded the alleys like a heartbeat. Each signal layered meaning, each sound hinted intention. "Elon, it's different now," she whispered, eyes scanning shadows that seemed almost alive. "I can feel it. 1-6, 1-6s, 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 1-6s. I can feel it from Andrew. 1-6s, 1-6s, 1-6s. I can feel it." Awareness had sharpened, reading tension not only in movement but in ambient cues, the hum of a transformer, the faint vibration underfoot, the ripple of wind through narrow corridors. "Yes," he said softly. "The real test begins when the antagonist realizes you're aware." That's when patience becomes as important as perception. Presence had become a shield, observation, a sword, microbeats, subtle arcs, layered signals, they were tools as vital as any weapon. A figure emerged from the far alley, the antagonist motif solidifying, hood low, shoulders tense, fingers brushing a metallic surface. The metallic click pulsed again, signature and intent interwoven. Elon's eyes scanned, noting the micro-arc of approach, the subtle swaying gait, the rhythmic exhale betraying hesitation beneath confidence. "Do you see him?" she whispered. Her breath trembled slightly, small yet steady. Observation had become instinct, but stakes were higher now. "Yes," he said, voice calm, grounded. "But labels don't matter here. Read the motion, the rhythm, the micro-arcs. Understand first, act second." His presence radiated subtle control, a quiet assertion threading through ambient space. The figure stopped, half in shadow, half in neon light. Microbeats shifted. Small adjustments of gloves, subtle shifts in weight, the faint scrape of shoes on wet pavement. Tension layered over tension, each signal a narrative in motion. Elon cataloged every detail, embedding patterns into comprehension before any move could escalate. She exhaled, small hands tightening on his. "He's watching me." Awareness picked up the fine pulse of intent, the almost invisible signal that said testing boundaries had become personal. "Yes," Elon whispered. "And that's when we test presence. Observation alone isn't enough. Influence becomes necessary without breaking, without confrontation, without noise." He adjusted his micro-position. Subtle shift in weight, slight inhale, and the street itself seemed to realign. The antagonist paused, shadow motif flickering, uncertainty layering over intent. A sudden metallic tap echoed from a fire escape above, microbeat perfectly placed, meant to distract. Elon's daughter froze, then recalibrated. I see it," she whispered. "It's trying to trick me." Observation had become armor, awareness, influence. She read the story hidden within each motion, each sound, each reflected light fragment. "Yes," Elon said. "Now act with patience. Let the story guide you." Micro-arcs, subtle signals, layered rhythms, each one waiting for comprehension to shape outcome. The antagonist moved, slow, deliberate, testing micro-arcs. A flick of the wrist, slight adjustment of coat, weight shifted forward. Elon subtly mirrored. Subtle shift in stance, presence asserting invisible boundaries. The shadow paused, recalibrating trajectory. Observation alone had already rewritten intention. "Ready," she whispered. Small voice steady despite tension. "Always," he said. Presence radiated, micro-arcs aligned, awareness focused. The figure made a sudden gesture, reaching toward a loose grate. Fingers brushing metal, but motion was intercepted before it could escalate. Elon's subtle adjustment, tiny shift in micro-position, redirected trajectory. The antagonist paused, hesitation, threading tension over intent. Observation had shaped outcome before chaos could manifest. She exhaled, relief threading pride. "It's like I can control what happens," she whispered. Awareness had become influence, influence had become authority, authority had become empowerment. Elon nodded. "Yes. But remember, the world shifts faster than the schoolyard. Every pattern has a break point. Every rhythm has unexpected beats. Comprehension must remain constant. Presence must remain absolute." His eyes swept the alley, shadows pooling in corners, reflections of neon, distant hums, faint footsteps. Micro-arcs layered into a complex map, all signals telling narrative truth. The antagonist shifted again, micro-arcs threading subtle pressure through the environment. Elon mirrored small weight adjustments, micro-shifts, breaths synchronized. The figure froze, uncertainty rippling through shadow motif, tension diffused invisibly. Observation had dictated the narrative, subtly steering outcomes without confrontation. Her hands tightened, small frame alert. I can see his plan," she whispered. Every motion, every signal, every shadow. Prediction layered over comprehension. Microbeats aligning. Awareness had become foresight. Presence had become authority. Observation had become mastery. A sudden sound, A metallic clatter from the opposite street tested their concentration. The antagonist glanced, micro-arcs flickering, yet motion recalibrated. Elon's presence subtly redirected tension, guiding the narrative, reshaping the environment through invisible influence. Observation had neutralized chaos before it erupted. She breathed slowly, grounding herself. I can handle him, she whispered. Micro-arcs, shadow motifs, layered signals, they were no longer abstract. They were instruments, tools, guardians, shaping reality. Yes, Elon said softly. And that's the point. Influence is invisible. Control is subtle. Awareness dictates outcome. Presence is the thread connecting all motion. Shadows receded, neon reflected across puddles, and the antagonist lingered at the edge, micro-arcs recalibrating, testing new thresholds. The street itself seemed to respond, tension weaving through air, reflections shimmering, sounds layering into a delicate rhythm. Each microbeat mattered. The scrape of metal, the shuffle of shoes, the faint exhale through gloves. All arcs, all patterns, all signals composed a silent narrative, read and guided through awareness and presence. She squeezed his hand, small smile, threading relief through pride. I understand now. Observation had become instinct, awareness, armor, presence, influence. She read intention before action, predicted trajectory, shaped outcomes. She had learned to master the invisible language of motion, shadow, and tension. Elon's eyes softened, pride threading through quiet calm. Yes. And that's the lesson. Mastery isn't confrontation. Mastery is observation. Influence is quiet. Awareness is everything. Micro-arcs, subtle motifs, layered narratives, the silent language of life became tangible, powerful, and absolute. The antagonist lingered at the alley edge, motif intact, recalibrating for future arcs, yet aware they could not dictate outcomes without consequence. Observation, presence, and awareness had already guided events. She looked up at him, eyes radiant. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not for intervention, but for teaching, comprehension, subtle influence, and the mastery of observation." "I'll always notice," Elon replied softly. Presence, observation, awareness, they were not lessons anymore. They were tools, guardians, companions guiding movement through a complex world. The night deepened, neon reflections shattered across puddles, shadows pooling long and soft. Micro-arcs, subtle signals, layered narratives, each fragment mattered, each motion communicated, each motif influenced outcomes. The antagonist's micro-arcs, while recalibrating, could not escape the structured awareness now shaping every narrative beat. And, as the darkness fully embraced the street, Elon realized the truth. The highest stakes are often invisible. Battles are silent. Mastery is subtle. Observation shapes reality. Presence controls narrative. Awareness guides destiny. She squeezed his hand once more, small voice steady. "I think I'm ready for anything now." "Yes," he replied softly, "and you already are." Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, they were now permanent tools, guardians, and silent teachers guiding every step through the intricate, layered reality of the world. The antagonist receded further into shadow, recalibrating micro-arcs, yet subtly aware that every motion had been read, every signal anticipated, every intention neutralized. Presence, awareness, and observation had become invisible walls no action could breach without consequence. Elon and his daughter continued walking, synchronized steps, awareness aligned, presence absolute. The narrative of the night tension, layered signals, micro-arcs, subtle mastery stretched behind them, guiding every step forward, invisible but undeniable. And in that quiet, reflective moment, Elon knew the true victory was not in confrontation but in comprehension. The quiet mastery of observation and presence ensured survival, influence, and resilience, shaping both environment and destiny. Some lessons come not from instruction, but from standing alone in the storm. The city had grown quieter, the night heavy with anticipation. Neon reflections glimmered across puddles, fragmented into micro-arcs that shifted with every footstep. Elon and his daughter moved cautiously, small hands threading together, breaths synchronized, awareness stretched across the surrounding streets. The antagonist's shadow motif lingered in memory, a constant undercurrent of tension threading through every motion. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, eyes scanning reflections on wet pavement. "Like, something's about to happen?" Awareness had sharpened beyond observation. Every vibration, every flicker of light, every faint metallic sound carried meaning. "Yes," Elon said softly, adjusting posture, weight subtly shifting, presence radiating calm yet firm. "The true test comes when you are alone. Observation and influence must sustain themselves without guidance. Presence becomes your own authority." He scanned surrounding microarcs, a distant rat scuttling across the sidewalk, the scrape of a dumpster lid, the faint vibration of traffic on a far bridge. Patterns layered across space like an invisible map, each signal a fragment of potential narrative. She exhaled, small body braced, eyes keen. "Alone, I think I can do it." Her voice trembled slightly, but confidence radiated beneath, born from weeks of micro-beat mastery and layered observation. Presence had become instinct, awareness, armor, comprehension, a guide. A soft metallic click echoed from a nearby alley, precise and deliberate. Microarcs of motion indicated movement before sight could confirm. Shadow shifts, faint reflections, slight adjustments in balance. Elon nodded subtly. "That's your cue. Observe first, influence second, act last. If you resonations, without." The alley was narrow, slick with rain, shadows pooling in corners. Neon splinters reflected across wet asphalt, fragmenting perception, testing the clarity of awareness. Microarcs layered into complex patterns. Distant footsteps, faint scraping, a paper drifting across the ground, subtle wind shifts rattling trash bins. She stepped forward, small but deliberate, every motion precise, every breath measured. I see him," she whispered. Observation had become instinct, comprehension a second skin. Every microbeat communicated intention, every reflection whispered narrative truth. From the shadowed end of the alley, the antagonist emerged, motif strong, body tense, intent threaded through each subtle motion. A slight sway, metallic click of gloves, rhythmic exhale, microarcs of confrontation threading tension across space. Elon's daughter froze, micro-muscles adjusting, posture aligning with ambient rhythms. Presence had become authority. "Elon, I think he knows I'm alone," she whispered. Awareness, presence, comprehension, they were tools, yet the stakes rose with isolation. "Yes." Elon's voice carried through subtle transmission of calm. "Now trust yourself. Observation first. Influence flows from awareness. Action aligns only when story is clear." He had guided her to this threshold. Now, mastery required independence. The antagonist advanced, slow, deliberate, testing microarcs. Slight shifts in weight, flick of wrist, subtle foot scrape. Each movement layered tension, each signal a question to be answered. She read every signal, predicted trajectory, adjusted micropresence, synchronized breathing to maintain influence over narrative arcs. Her small hands tightened subtly, awareness coiled like a spring, ready to release. I can redirect him," she whispered. Microarcs aligned, shadow motifs responded, environmental signals bent subtly under invisible influence. Presence had become self-sufficient, awareness its engine, observation its compass. The antagonist reached toward a loose trash bin, a sudden metallic clang poised to distract. She anticipated the motion, subtle adjustment in weight, micro-arc correction, influence nudging trajectory. The bin tipped, but not toward chaos. Motion redirected, microbeat aligned, tension diffused. Observation had shaped outcome before confrontation occurred. Her lips parted in a small, steady breath. "It's working." Microarcs, subtle signals, shadow motifs, each read, each understood, each subtly influenced. Awareness had become authority, presence its vessel, comprehension the guiding principle. The antagonist froze, hesitation threading across every microbeat, subtle recalibration of shadow motif, tension layered with uncertainty, every motion now mirrored by invisible influence, narrative reshaped by comprehension alone. Elon's daughter, though alone, commanded the space with quiet mastery. She exhaled slowly, relief and pride threading through measured tension. I'm doing it myself," she whispered. Observation had become instinct, awareness, armor, influence absolute. The narrative of the alley, the shadows, the motion, the micro-arcs bent subtly under her invisible authority. The antagonist adjusted again, moving slightly toward a fire escape, fingers brushing metal, intent clear. She anticipated, presence, radiating subtle influence. Micro-arcs nudged trajectory, motion deflected without confrontation. The shadow motif faltered. Hesitation. Threading uncertainty over intent. Observation, awareness, presence, her mastery now fully independent. A sudden wind swept the alley, scattering papers and debris. Micro-arcs collided, shadow motifs shifted, reflections danced, sound layered tension across wet asphalt. She absorbed every signal, recalibrated posture, synchronized breathing, presence becoming the silent anchor against chaos. I understand now, she whispered, small voice steady. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, comprehension mastery. She read intention before action, predicted outcome, subtly shaped reality through microbeat precision. The antagonist paused, shadow motif retreating slightly, recognizing invisible boundaries. Microarcs recalibrated for future testing, yet immediate narrative had been guided, influenced, controlled. Presence and awareness had triumphed without confrontation, mastery proving self-sufficient. She exhaled, shoulders easing, small smile threading relief through pride. I can handle anything, she whispered. Influence, observation, presence, they had become tools. Guardians, instruments, shaping reality around her. Elon stepped from a nearby street corner, unnoticed until now. Subtle presence, radiating calm, approval threaded in micro-arcs. Yes, he whispered softly. And that's the lesson. Mastery isn't about action alone. It's about perception, influence, presence, and the ability to guide narrative through awareness. Alone or not, you are always capable. The city stretched ahead, neon reflections broken across wet streets, shadows pooling long and soft. Ambient micro-arcs, threading tension, motion, and narrative together. Awareness had become authority, observation, influence, presence, absolute. The antagonist lingered at the alley edge, recalibrating, micro-arcs, recalculated, shadow motifs still present but neutralized. Every motion, every signal, every trajectory had been read, anticipated, influenced. Presence, awareness, observation, the tools of mastery had been wielded independently, invisibly, yet decisively. She looked up at Elon, eyes bright, small face radiant with comprehension and pride. Thank you, she whispered. Not for guidance, not for instruction, but for teaching mastery, for giving her presence, awareness, and observation as her own weapons. I'll always notice, he replied softly. Presence, observation, awareness, no longer lessons, but companions, tools, guardians, threading their way through layered reality. Every micro-arc, every shadow motif, every subtle environmental cue now legible, interpretable, influenceable. Mastery independent, yet nurtured. The night deepened, neon glowing across puddles, shadows pooling long and soft, micro-arcs threading invisible narratives across streets. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, comprehension, mastery. The antagonist's motifs recalibrated, but the immediate narrative had been resolved with subtle authority. And as they walked forward, steps synchronized, awareness aligned, presence absolute, Elon knew the truth. Some lessons require independence. Some mastery is earned only by acting alone in the storm. Observation shapes reality. Awareness guides outcomes. Presence asserts authority. Influence is silent, but absolute. She squeezed his hand once more, small voice firm. I think I can face anything now. Yes, he replied softly, and you already are. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, they had become permanent companions, tools, guardians, instruments of mastery, guiding every step through the complex, layered reality of the world. The antagonist retreated into shadow, recalibrating for future arcs, motif present but neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, the lessons now fully internalized, wielded independently. Mastery achieved not through confrontation, but comprehension. Influence quiet but absolute, reality subtly shaped through observation. As they emerged from the alley into the open streets, neon flickering and rain finally falling, Elon realized the final truth. Independence, mastery, and subtle influence define survival. Awareness is power, observation is authority, presence is influence, and she had become the embodiment of all three. Some shadows are not cast by light, but by the choices we refuse to see. The dawn hadn't arrived, yet the city carried a quiet, electric hum, neon reflections fading into soft, storm-gray tones. Elon and his daughter moved with deliberate awareness, each step measured, each breath synchronized. The lessons of the night still lingered, but new challenges threaded themselves into the environment. Distant metallic clicks, the faint vibration of unseen machinery, micro-arcs of movement, weaving patterns through deserted streets. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, small voice taut with anticipation. Like the city itself is alive? Observation had become instinct, but the complexity of the urban micro-arcs introduced unpredictability. Shadows shifted, signals overlapped, microbeats collided, each layer demanding comprehension. "Yes," Elon said softly, posture fluid yet grounded, presence radiating quiet authority. "The city is more than its streets. It's a network of motion, intent, and influence. Every shadow, every hum, every flicker of light is part of the narrative." His voice carried calm like a subtle motif, reassuring, anchoring. She exhaled slowly, small fingers tightening around his. I think I understand the pattern, but it's different now." Awareness had evolved, the stakes were larger, the antagonist motifs now overlapping with environmental micro-arcs, creating tension across multiple layers. "Exactly," Elon whispered, "and that's why independence matters. Observation alone isn't enough. Awareness must integrate multiple threads simultaneously. Presence must assert authority across layers, and comprehension must shape outcomes invisibly." He gestured subtly, small movements threading influence over surrounding micro-arcs, distant hum of traffic, faint scrape of metal, subtle shift in wind through alleyways. Ahead, the first antagonist emerged, motif clear yet nuanced. Hood low, shoulders taut, hands brushing metallic surfaces in rhythm with microbeats. Their approach tested boundaries, shadow motifs layering over environmental arcs. Elon's daughter froze for a fraction, recalibrating posture, presence radiating subtle influence, observation, awareness, comprehension, her instruments of mastery activated in unison. "Alone," she whispered. Her voice was calm, yet her body thrummed with tension. Micro-arcs, shadow motifs, subtle environmental signals, each a layer of narrative requiring reading, understanding, and influence. "Yes," Elon said softly, "you've been trained for this. Let the narrative reveal itself." Influence flows from comprehension. Presence asserts authority. Observation reads the story before it unfolds. End quote. From 1917. End quote. "Whether are Tection subscribe deal." End quote. "We can serious of say, we haven't Ida deal. We haven't tells, we haven't 1907. The antagonist shifted, micro-arcs, threading tension through the alley. Each movement, a signal. Each breath a question. Elon's daughter mirrored subtle weight shifts, adjusted micropresence, her internal rhythm aligning with external micro-arcs. Influence radiated silently, reshaping the narrative without a single overt action. A second figure emerged from another street, layered motif intersecting with the first. Metallic taps, subtle shifts of balance, faint exhalations. Micro-arcs collided, tension doubled, environmental cues, now threading complex narratives. She exhaled, a small smile threading through measured focus. I can read them both." Observation had evolved into multi-layered comprehension. Awareness now operated across intersecting arcs. "Yes," Elon whispered. "This is the test. Simultaneous narratives, overlapping micro-arcs, layered tension. Presence must assert control without overt action. Influence must shape outcomes invisibly." The first antagonist reached toward a loose crate, subtle metallic clicks threading across wet asphalt. The second shifted toward a shadowed corner, gloved hands brushing a railing, shadow motif flickering. She anticipated both trajectories, subtle adjustments in micropresence nudging outcomes, environmental tension bending under invisible authority. A sudden clatter from a distant alley added complexity. Micro-arcs collided, shadows shifted, reflections fractured across puddles. Elon's daughter absorbed every detail, recalibrating, microbeats aligning, presence asserting authority across multi-layered narrative threads. Observation had become foresight, awareness had become influence. Comprehension had become mastery. The first antagonist froze, hesitation threading tension over intent. The second, recalibrating, mirrored uncertainty. Each shadow motif flickered, micro-arcs shifting, environmental layers bending subtly under unseen authority. She exhaled slowly, shoulders easing, small smile threading relief through concentration. I can control this. Influence, observation, and presence tools, now wielded independently across multiple layers. Elon nodded, subtle pride threading calm authority. Yes, you're integrating complexity, multi-layered awareness, presence that asserts control across intersecting narratives. Observation that reads the invisible patterns of motion. That is mastery. As worrying, when actually downs, the antagonists exchanged subtle signals. Micro-arcs of hesitation. Shadow motifs pausing, motion recalibrating. The alley's ambient tension had become an invisible battlefield. Outcomes influenced before action, chaos neutralized before it could emerge. She adjusted weight, subtle shift in posture, micro-arcs aligning with overlapping signals. The first antagonist stepped slightly forward, hand brushing metal. The second shifted toward a pile of debris. She anticipated both, presence radiating influence, micro-arcs nudging trajectories, shadow motifs faltering. Observation had already dictated the immediate narrative. Her small hands clenched subtly. Presence, absolute. I am ready for anything, she whispered. Awareness integrated, comprehension operational, influence invisible yet undeniable. Microbeats, layered shadows, environmental cues, all instruments of mastery. The antagonists paused, micro-arcs recalibrating, hesitation threading over intent. The narrative of the alley multi-layered, overlapping, tense had been reshaped by invisible authority. Presence, awareness, observation, fully independent, fully integrated. Elon stepped forward slightly, subtle presence radiating calm, approval threading micro-arcs. Yes. And that's the lesson. Mastery is not about confronting every motion. It's about integrating multiple layers, understanding the interplay of micro-arcs, asserting influence silently, shaping outcomes without noise. She exhaled slowly, shoulders relaxing, eyes bright with comprehension. I can see it all, she whispered. Observation, awareness, presence tools now wielded independently, across layers, across overlapping narratives. Mastery no longer required intervention. It existed in understanding, subtle influence, and silent authority. The first antagonist shifted again, micro-arcs threading tension through space, faint metallic clicks punctuating shadow motifs. The second moved subtly, testing boundaries, adjusting motion in response to invisible influence. Both recalibrated under the silent guidance of presence and awareness. Tension diffused, outcomes neutralized. I understand now, she whispered. Small voice firm. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, comprehension, mastery. Every shadow motif, every microbeat, every reflection in neon was legible, interpretable, influenceable. Elon smiled faintly, pride threading, calm, authority. Yes, the world is complex. Threats overlap, micro-arcs intertwine, tension layers. Mastery lies in reading it, influencing it, asserting presence silently. Alone or not, you can navigate this web. The antagonists lingered at alley edges, recalibrating, micro-arcs adjusted, motifs present but neutralized. Observation, awareness, presence tools, wielded across multiple layers, independent, invisible, absolute. She looked up at Elon, eyes radiant. Thank you, she whispered. Not for protection, but for teaching mastery across complexity, for giving presence, awareness, observation, the instruments of influence and survival. I'll always notice, Elon replied softly. Presence, observation, awareness, they had become companions, tools, guardians threading through layered reality. Every micro-arc, shadow motif, subtle environmental signal, now legible, interpretable, influenceable. The city stretched ahead, neon reflections breaking across wet streets, shadows pooling, micro-arcs threading layered narratives across multiple dimensions. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, comprehension, mastery. Antagonists recalibrated, but immediate narratives were resolved with subtle authority, invisible mastery guiding outcomes. And as they walked forward, synchronized steps, awareness aligned, presence absolute, Elon realized some lessons exist only within multi-layered complexity. Independence, mastery, subtle, influence. These define survival. Awareness is power. Observation is authority. Presence is influence. Mastery is invisible but undeniable. She squeezed his hand, small voice steady. I can handle it, all of it. Yes, he replied softly. And you already are. Micro-arcs, awareness, observation, presence, they had become permanent companions, tools, guardians, instruments of mastery, guiding every step through a world layered with complexity and motion. The antagonists retreated further into shadow, recalibrating micro-arcs, motifs, present but neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, the lessons now fully integrated, independent, wielded, invisibly. Mastery achieved across multiple layers, influence silent yet absolute, reality subtly shaped through observation. As they emerged onto the main street, storm-gray dawn creeping over rooftops, Elon knew the truth. Layered complexity is inevitable. Overlapping narratives unavoidable. Mastery is not confrontation, but comprehension. Presence asserts authority. Awareness dictates outcome. Observation interprets and shapes reality. And she had learned to wield all three, fully, independently. Sometimes the hardest choices aren't between right and wrong, but between who we were and who we must become. The city was quiet now, but not silent. Neon flickers traced across puddles, shadows stretched longer under flickering streetlights, and distant metallic taps echoed like warnings across wet asphalt. Elon's daughter walked slightly ahead, small hand brushing his, awareness tuned to the subtle layers of tension weaving through the streets. Every micro-arc, every shadow motif, every environmental signal demanded reading, interpreting, and influencing. Elon, there's something I don't understand, she whispered, eyes scanning reflections in puddles, noting slight shifts and shadows. I can feel it, like the choices I make here matter differently. Observation had become instinct, awareness armor, presence influence. But now comprehension extended into ethical terrain. The moral micro-arcs of consequence. Yes, Elon said softly, posture grounded, microbeats aligned with surrounding tension. The greatest mastery isn't just survival or influence, it's understanding that every action shapes more than the immediate narrative. Choices echo across layered realities. Each shadow, each motion, each reflection carries consequence. She exhaled slowly, small fingers tightening around his. So, if I choose wrong. Her voice trembled slightly, awareness scanning overlapping antagonist motifs. I could make things worse. Well, exactly, Elon whispered. Presence radiated calm, influence subtle but undeniable, micro-arcs subtly aligning narrative threads. But mastery includes understanding consequences before acting. Awareness guides influence, observation informs presence, and comprehension shapes choices with clarity. Ahead, the first antagonist emerged from a shadowed corner, motif sharp, posture taut, gloves brushing faint metallic surfaces. Micro-arcs threaded tension through space, each step a subtle question to be answered. She froze, micro-muscles adjusting, body aligned with environmental rhythms, presence radiating authority, observation and awareness intertwined with instinct, ready to respond. The second figure appeared from the opposite street, shadow motif layered with the first. Microbeats collided, metallic clicks, subtle shuffles, faint exhalations, narratives overlapping. tension multiplying. Elon's daughter exhaled, small smile threading through focused determination. I can read them both, and see the consequences of my moves. Yes, Elon said softly. Your mastery now must include moral calibration. Influence shapes outcomes, but choices define character. Observation tells you what is, awareness what could be, and presence guides what should be. The first antagonist reached toward a loose fire escape railing, subtle metallic click. The second shifted toward a stack of crates, gloved hands brushing surfaces. She anticipated both. Micro arcs, aligning, presence, asserting subtle control, influence, bending trajectories, without confrontation. Observation had already dictated immediate outcomes, but a third factor emerged. A small child from a nearby alley, frightened and unaware, microarcs colliding with antagonist motifs. Reflexive mastery now required moral awareness. Influence could redirect motion, presence could assert boundaries, observation could anticipate danger, but choices carried consequences beyond efficiency. She inhaled deeply, recalibrating posture, microbeats harmonizing with overlapping narrative layers. I can protect them without hurting anyone, she whispered. Ethical comprehension now intertwined with practical mastery. Awareness, influence, presence, all tools to balance action and consequence. The first antagonist froze, hesitation threading tension over intent. The second mirrored uncertainty, shadow motifs flickering in response to invisible influence. The child's small movements added a dynamic microarc, vulnerability layered into the narrative. She adjusted subtly. Posture, weight, microarcs, and environmental alignment, nudging trajectories, reshaping motion. Presence asserted authority. Influence flowed quietly. Observation interpreted complexity. A sudden clatter, a metal pipe sliding across wet asphalt, added urgency. Microarcs collided, shadows shifted, environmental cues layered tension further. She absorbed every signal, recalibrated, synchronized breathing, presence anchoring the multi-layered narrative. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, influence, subtle yet undeniable. The first antagonist's micro-arcs shifted toward the child, metallic click of gloves punctuating intent. The second moved slightly toward crates, misalignment threatening minor chaos. She anticipated both, adjusting posture, micro-arcs, aligning trajectories, subtle influence, diffusing tension, ensuring safety without confrontation. Observation had rewritten narrative outcomes. I can protect everyone, she whispered, small smile threading pride through measured concentration. Influence, observation, presence tools wielded independently across moral and physical layers. Ethical mastery now intertwined with physical mastery, demonstrating comprehension beyond mere survival. Elon stepped slightly forward, subtle presence radiating calm, pride threading microarcs. Yes, mastery is not only about survival or control, it's about understanding the ethical microarcs of every action, predicting consequences, and influencing outcomes without unnecessary harm. His eyes scanned layered environmental cues, puddles reflecting neon, shadows pooling across streets, distant metallic taps, subtle wind shifts all integrated into layered comprehension. The first antagonist paused, hesitation threading tension through microarcs. The second adjusted, minor recalibration of shadow motifs. The child hesitated, small body poised at the edge of a puddle, unknowingly participating in the narrative microarcs. She exhaled slowly, micro-muscles relaxed, small hands steady. Observation had guided ethical influence. Presence ensured safety. Awareness maintained control. Her gaze lifted, small voice calm yet strong. I understand. Choices matter, not just actions. Consequences ripple through everything. Observation, awareness, presence, tools, no longer merely practical, now moral, ethical, absolute. The antagonists exchanged subtle signals, hesitation, microarcs shifting, shadow motifs recalibrating under invisible influence. Immediate narrative stabilized, layered arcs neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, all integrated with ethical comprehension. Mastery now included responsibility. A soft metallic tap from a distant alley punctuated the moment. Micro-arcs rippled across the environment, shadows shifted slightly, tension layered subtly. She anticipated future trajectories. Influence nudged motion. Presence guided the overlapping narratives without confrontation. Observation, awareness, comprehension, fully integrated, fully independent, fully ethical. I can make the right choice, she whispered. Microarcs aligned, shadow motifs responded, environmental tension neutralized. Presence absolute, influence invisible yet undeniable. Observation, foresight, now moral. Ethical mastery threaded into practical skill. Elon smiled faintly, subtle pride threading calm authority. Yes, independence includes ethical responsibility. Mastery is the ability to act decisively while preserving integrity, to influence outcomes without compromising principles. The antagonists lingered at alley edges, recalibrating micro-arcs, shadow motifs present but neutralized. Observation, awareness, presence, ethical comprehension tools wielded independently, layered across complex narratives. Mastery was no longer merely physical. It was moral, psychological, and absolute. She exhaled slowly, small smile bright. I can face everything now, she whispered. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, ethical comprehension, mastery. Every motion, every shadow, every environmental cue, legible, interpretable, influenceable, with moral integrity. The city stretched ahead, neon reflections fractured across puddles, shadows pooling, micro-arcs threading layered narratives across streets. Antagonists recalibrated, yet immediate narrative resolved through subtle authority, mastery, integrating moral and practical understanding. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension, tools permanent, independent, absolute. She looked up at Elon, eyes radiant. Thank you, she whispered. Not for instruction, but for teaching mastery, independence, and ethical influence. I'll always notice, Elon replied softly. Presence, observation, awareness, ethical comprehension. They had become companions, tools, guardians, threading through layered reality. Every microarc, shadow motif, environmental signal now legible, interpretable, influenceable. And, as they walked forward, synchronized steps, awareness aligned, presence absolute. Elon realized, mastery is not just about action or survival. It is about responsibility, ethical influence, independent comprehension, and quiet authority. Observation shapes reality. Awareness dictates outcomes, presence asserts influence, ethical mastery defines choice. She squeezed his hand once more, small voice firm. I can handle all of it, and still do what's right. End quote. Without and has a very hoe as a very ass. Yes, he replied softly, and you already are. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, ethical comprehension, they had become permanent companions, tools, guardians, instruments of mastery, guiding every step through a world layered with complexity, consequence, and motion. The antagonists receded into shadow, recalibrating micro-arcs, motifs present but neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension. The lessons now fully integrated, independent, wielded, invisibly. Mastery achieved across physical, emotional, and moral layers. Influence silent yet absolute. Reality subtly shaped through observation and principle. As dawn crept fully over the rooftops, storm gray light washing the streets, Elon knew, some choices define not just outcomes, but the character-wielding influence. Ethical mastery, independent comprehension, quiet authority, these are the true tools of survival, and she had learned them fully. True mastery is revealed not in calm, but in the storm where every choice burns. The city had shifted again. Neon was weaker now, shadows longer, micro-arcs sharper, layering tension across streets slick with rain. Elon and his daughter moved cautiously, small hands clasped. breaths synchronized, presence radiating quiet authority. Observation and awareness were no longer exercises, they were instinct. Their internal rhythms aligned with every microbeat, every environmental cue, every shadow motif. Something feels off, she whispered, eyes scanning reflections in puddles in the uneven glow of streetlights. Like it's not just one opponent this time. The multi-layered antagonist motifs from before had evolved. Micro-arcs collided and overlapped, signaling complexity beyond simple confrontation. Yes, Elon said softly, posture grounded. Subtle microbeats, synchronizing with surrounding tension. This is the storm you've been preparing for. Not a single motion to predict, not a linear narrative. Multiple overlapping arcs, layered influence, and unforeseen consequences. Mastery now must be adaptive, independent, and fully integrated. Ahead, the first antagonist appeared, motif sharp, posture taut, gloves brushing metallic surfaces in rhythm with microbeats. The second emerged simultaneously from a shadowed corner, slight hesitation visible, micro-arcs threading tension through overlapping spaces. But a third figure joined from the far street. Silhouette fractured by neon reflection, micro-arcs colliding with the previous two, environmental tension multiplying. She froze for a fraction, small fingers tightening around his, micro-muscles coiling. 3, at once? Her voice was calm, but presence radiated focus. Observation, awareness, comprehension, these tools had evolved, but now they were tested to their limits. Yes, Elon whispered. Complexity. Multiple narratives, conflicting arcs, overlapping shadow motifs. Observation must anticipate, awareness must integrate, presence must assert influence across every layer simultaneously. You are ready. You are ready. You are ready. You are ready. The first antagonist reached toward a loose fire escape railing. The second toward crates stacked unevenly. The third adjusted posture near a flickering neon sign, hands brushing faint metal. Micro-arcs collided, shadows flickered, environmental signals layered tension across all dimensions. She exhaled slowly, recalibrating posture, microbeats aligning with intersecting arcs. I can read them all. Observation had evolved into multi-threaded comprehension. Awareness now operated across conflicting trajectories. Presence asserting subtle influence invisibly. A sudden metallic tap echoed from a distant alley, a micro-arc colliding with environmental tension. Shadows shifted, puddles reflected fragmented neon. Wind rattled a loose sign. Each element required immediate comprehension. Her small hands clenched subtly. Presence radiated authority. Influence nudged motion. Observation predicted trajectory. The first antagonist hesitated, shadow motif flickering. The second mirrored uncertainty, microarcs adjusting to unseen influence. The third paused, small metallic clicks punctuating motion, slight weight shifts echoing environmental microarcs. She anticipated all three, subtle adjustments in posture, breathing, microbeats, presence, asserting authority invisibly. I can control this, she whispered. Influence, observation, and presence tools now wielded independently across physical, environmental, and psychological layers. Mastery was no longer linear. It had become a web of motion, tension, and subtle authority. Elon stepped slightly forward, micro-arcs radiating calm, presence anchoring layered narratives. Yes, this is the test. Multi-layered antagonists, environmental complexity, unpredictable trajectories. Your mastery must integrate observation, awareness, presence, and ethical comprehension simultaneously. Influence is subtle but absolute, and a faint metallic scrape echoed from a nearby staircase. Micro-arcs collided with environmental tension. Shadows pooled, reflections fragmented across wet streets. She inhaled deeply, recalibrated posture, synchronized breathing, presence anchoring the multi-threaded narrative. Observation had become foresight, awareness armor, influence invisible but undeniable. The first antagonist lunged slightly toward a railing, the second toward crates, the third toward a flickering neon sign. She anticipated every trajectory, subtle shifts in micropresence nudging outcomes, environmental tension bending under invisible authority. Observation had dictated immediate narrative outcomes, presence ensured stability, influence subtly redirected motion. I can protect everyone, she whispered. A moral micro-arc threaded into layered physical mastery. Neutralize threat without confrontation, safeguard by influence alone, anticipate outcomes before action. Ethical comprehension now fully integrated. The first antagonist froze. Hesitation, threading tension through micro-arcs. The second mirrored uncertainty. The third recalibrated, shadow motifs flickering. Her subtle presence asserted invisible control. Influence nudged trajectories. Observation interpreted the complex web of overlapping narratives. Immediate chaos neutralized. A sudden clatter, a loose pipe rolling across wet asphalt added urgency. Microarcs collided. Reflections fractured. Reflections fractured. She absorbed every signal, recalibrated, synchronized microbeats with environmental cues, presence anchoring multiple layers. Observation foresaw outcomes, awareness predicted trajectories, influence shaped motion invisibly. The antagonists moved again, testing boundaries. Micro arcs of aggression, subtle metallic clicks, slight posture shifts. She adjusted. Subtle recalibrations in posture. Weight, microbeats. Presence, asserting authority across all trajectories. Influence flowed silently, guiding motion, ensuring safety. Observation, awareness, ethical comprehension, presence fully integrated, fully independent, fully absolute. I can handle this storm, she whispered. Small smile, threading pride through concentration. Multi-layered mastery now included moral, physical, and psychological integration, demonstrating comprehension beyond survival or efficiency. Elon nodded. Pride threading subtle authority. Yes. Complexity, multi-layered threat, ethical responsibility. Observation reads motion, awareness integrates layers, presence asserts influence, ethical mastery shapes consequences. That is true mastery. The antagonist lingered, recalibrating micro-arcs, motifs present but neutralized, immediate narrative stabilized. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension tools, fully wielded, independent, absolute. Influence invisible but undeniable, multi-layered conflict neutralized before chaos could erupt. A faint wind swept through the alley, scattering debris, micro-arcs colliding, shadows shifting. She adjusted posture, recalibrated microbeats. Presence radiating subtle authority across overlapping narratives. Observation predicted minor trajectory changes. Influence nudge motion. Environmental tension neutralized. Mastery complete. Multi-layered. Ethically sound. Her gaze lifted. Small voice calm but strong. I am ready for anything, she whispered. Observation, foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, ethical, comprehension, mastery, all fully integrated. Every motion, every shadow, every microarc legible, interpretable, influenceable. The antagonists receded further into shadows, recalibrating microarcs, motifs present but neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension. The lessons now fully internalized, independent, wielded invisibly. Mastery achieved across physical, moral, and psychological layers. Influence silent, absolute. Reality subtly shaped through observation, presence, and ethical decision-making. Elon smiled faintly, subtle pride threading calm authority. Yes. Independence, multi-layered comprehension, ethical influence, these define mastery. You have achieved it. The city stretched ahead, neon reflections broken across wet streets, shadows pooling, micro-arcs threading multi-layered narratives. Antagonists recalibrated, yet immediate narrative resolved through invisible authority, mastery integrating ethical, physical, and psychological understanding. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical, comprehension, tools. Permanent, independent, absolute. She looked up at Elon, eyes radiant. Thank you, she whispered. Not for guidance, but for teaching mastery under complexity, multi-layered threats, and ethical responsibility. I'll always notice, Elon replied softly. Presence, observation, awareness, ethical comprehension, they had become companions, tools, guardians threading through layered reality. Every microarc, shadow motif, environmental cue now legible, interpretable, influenceable. And, as they walked forward, synchronized steps, awareness aligned, presence absolute. Elon realized, true mastery is revealed, not in calm, but in storms where complexity collides, morality matters, and choices echo. Observation shapes reality. Awareness integrates layers. Presence asserts influence. Ethical comprehension defines outcome. She squeezed his hand, small voice firm. I can face everything and still choose what's right. Yes, he replied softly. And you already are. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, ethical mastery, they had become permanent companions, tools, guardians guiding every step through a world layered with complexity, consequence, and motion. The antagonists receded into shadows, recalibrating microarcs, motifs present but neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension. The lessons now fully integrated, independent, wielded invisibly, mastery achieved across multi-layered threats, influence silent yet absolute, reality subtly shaped through observation, presence, and principle. As the storm gray dawn deepened across rooftops, Elon understood. Mastery is not defined by calm moments, but by storms where overlapping narratives collide, ethical choices matter, and presence commands without overt action. She had learned to wield observation, awareness, presence, and ethical comprehension across every layer. Independent, absolute, unseen, yet undeniable. Every lesson hidden in shadows becomes a weapon when the storm finally breaks. The city's pulse had shifted. Neon fractured across puddles, shadows stretched and twisted, microarcs threading tension like invisible wires across streets. Elon and his daughter moved with a fluid precision, each step syncing with the ambient hum of distant machinery, metallic taps, and faint wind rattles. Every motion, every shadow, every reflection held potential consequences. Presence, observation, and awareness had become second-nature tools of mastery fully integrated into her being. Dad, I can feel it building, she whispered, small voice tight with anticipation. Her eyes scanned every alley, every corner, catching micro-arcs others might overlook, flickers of movement, subtle metallic scrapes, environmental tension layering like a silent storm. Like everything is converging. From 17s, his not making with 7. Yes, Elon said softly, shoulders squared, microbeats attuned to the city's rhythm. All lessons lead to this. Independent mastery, ethical comprehension, layered observation, they converge when complexity peaks. The storm isn't just outside. It's in every narrative, every motion, every shadow. Are you ready? She inhaled, fingers tightening around his, breath aligning with microarcs threading tension. I think I'm ready. Hey, my problems say, have a lotion around. When I ready, a sudden metallic click echoed from a distant alley, a subtle rhythm threading into environmental tension. Shadows pooled around corners, fractured neon reflecting across wet streets. Three antagonists emerged, motifs layered, microarcs intersecting, environmental signals multiplying across overlapping narratives. Their presence was quiet but insistent, each movement a question, each posture a challenge. She paused, micro-muscles coiling, subtle presence, radiating authority. Observation and awareness parsed trajectories, micro-arcs aligned with overlapping narrative layers. Influence flowed invisibly, nudging motion before it fully manifested. Ethical comprehension threaded into each decision. Protect, neutralize, observe without unnecessary harm. The first antagonist shifted toward a pile of crates, metallic tap echoing microarcs through the alley. The second adjusted near a flickering neon sign, shadow motif flickering, environmental tension layering. The third emerged from a distant street, subtle metallic scrape punctuating motion. Multi-layered threat converged, testing her mastery at every level. I can manage all of them, she whispered, exhaling slowly. Observation, foresight, awareness, integration, presence, authority, ethical comprehension, all tools. Fully operational, fully independent, fully integrated. Elon's subtle nod anchored her, micro arcs of calm threading across overlapping layers. Yes, this is your culmination. Presence asserts influence. Awareness integrates complexity. Observation dictates outcomes. Ethical mastery guides choice. You are ready for the storm. The first antagonist lunged slightly, micro arcs colliding with environmental tension. The second mirrored aggression, subtle metallic clicks punctuating movement. The third's shadow motif flickered, weight shifts threading tension across the multi-layered narrative. She anticipated all three, subtle adjustments in posture, microbeats, influence nudging trajectories invisibly. Observation dictated outcomes before action. A faint clatter from a distant fire escape added unpredictability. Debris rolling, shadow motifs shifting, puddle reflections fractured. Micro arcs collided, environmental tension layered across intersecting narratives. Her small hands tightened subtly, presence radiating authority across all trajectories. Influence flowed quietly, guiding motion, ensuring control. Observation, awareness, ethical comprehension, fully integrated, fully operational. The first antagonist froze mid-motion, hesitation threading tension across micro arcs. The second mirrored uncertainty. The third recalibrated, shadow motifs flickering. The storm of narrative tension collapsed under subtle mastery. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension, operating across multiple layers, neutralizing threat before chaos erupted. I can handle this, she whispered, voice steady. Multi-layered mastery now included ethical calibration under complex threat, physical and psychological influence, and environmental integration. Mastery had become invisible, subtle, yet absolute. Elon stepped forward slightly. Subtle presence threading calm authority. Yes, this is the apex. Independent mastery, ethical influence, layered observation, they converge here. Your comprehension defines outcomes. Your presence guides motion. Your influence shapes narrative invisibly. All threads now intersect. Anavra. Your influence shapes now intersect. A sudden metallic scrape echoed from above, a loose sign shifting in the wind. Micro-arcs collided, shadow motifs flickered, environmental tension spiked. She recalibrated posture, synchronized microbeats with the multi-layered narrative, presence, asserting authority invisibly. Observation foresaw trajectories, influence guided motion. Ethical comprehension ensured no harm beyond necessity. The first antagonist lunged again, metallic taps punctuating movement. The second mirrored, shadows pooling, micro-arcs colliding with environmental layers. The third advanced, cautiously, analyzing, calculating, posture poised for disruption. She anticipated all three, subtle micro-adjustments controlling motion before it fully manifested. Observation had become foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, ethical comprehension mastery. A sudden gust rattled a neon sign above, adding environmental tension to the multi-layered narrative. Micro-arcs collided, shadows flickered, reflections fractured. She inhaled deeply, recalibrated posture, presence, radiating authority across all layers. Influence flowed silently, guiding outcomes. Observation predicted motion. Awareness integrated complexity, ethical mastery shaped consequences. The first antagonist hesitated, recalibrating micro-arcs, shadow motif flickering. The second mirrored uncertainty. The third adjusted posture subtly. Multi-layered narrative tension diffused under invisible authority. Observation, awareness, presence, ethical comprehension. Tools fully operational, independent, absolute. I can face anything, she whispered, small smile threading pride through measured focus. Multi-layered mastery now integrated ethical, physical, and psychological comprehension, demonstrating absolute control without confrontation. Presence, influence, observation, ethical mastery all fully functional. Elon's eyes gleamed faintly, subtle pride threading authority. Yes. Complexity peaks. Threats overlap. Ethical stakes rise. Multi-layered mastery integrates comprehension, influence, presence, observation, and principle. You are complete. The antagonists lingered at alley edges, recalibrating micro-arcs, motifs present but neutralized, immediate narrative stabilized, presence, awareness, observation, ethical comprehension tools. Fully wielded, independent, absolute, influence, invisible yet undeniable, multi-layered conflict neutralized. A faint wind swept the streets, scattering debris, micro-arcs colliding, shadows shifting. She adjusted posture, recalibrated microbeats, presence asserting subtle authority. Observation predicted minor trajectory shifts. Influence nudged motion. Environmental tension neutralized. Mastery complete. Multi-layered, ethically integrated. She looked up at Elon, eyes radiant. I understand everything now, she whispered. Observation, foresight, awareness, armor, presence, influence, ethical mastery, all fully integrated. Every motion, shadow, environmental cue, legible, interpretable, influenceable. The city stretched ahead, neon fractured across puddles, shadows pooling, micro-arcs threading complex narratives. Antagonists recalibrated, yet immediate narrative resolved through invisible authority. Mastery integrating ethical, physical, psychological comprehension. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical mastery, tools permanent, independent, absolute. She squeezed his hand, small voice firm. I can face any storm, and still choose what's right. Yes, Elon replied softly, and you already are. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, ethical mastery, permanent companions, tools. Guardians guiding every step through layered complexity, consequence, and motion. As dawn broke fully over rooftops, storm-gray light washing streets, Elon realized, mastery is defined not in calm, but in storms where overlapping narratives collide, ethical choices matter, and presence guides, without overt action. Observation shapes reality. Awareness integrates layers. Presence asserts influence. Ethical comprehension defines outcomes. She had learned to wield all four fully. Independent, absolute, unseen, yet undeniable. The antagonists receded into shadows, micro-arcs, recalibrating, motifs present but neutralized. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical mastery, the lessons now fully internalized, independent, wielded invisibly. Multi-layered mastery achieved across threats, influence silent, absolute, and morally grounded. Reality subtly shaped through observation, presence, and principle. As the storm-gray dawn deepened across rooftops, Elon and his daughter walked forward. Synchronized steps, awareness aligned, presence absolute, mastery complete. Observation, awareness, presence, ethical comprehension, tools permanent, independent, absolute. All lessons of complexity, moral choice, and multi-layered threat now fully realized. Even in the quiet after a storm, mastery whispers its lessons through every shadow. The city was waking slowly. Neon flickers softened against the wet asphalt, puddles reflecting fractured dawn gold across streets that had absorbed every tension of the night. Elon's daughter walked beside him, hands brushing briefly, microbeats perfectly synchronized with her own calm but alert presence. Observation, awareness, ethical comprehension, and influence. They were no longer tools, they were extensions of her being, invisible yet undeniable. This feels different, she whispered. Small voice steady but layered with anticipation. Like the storm is over, but its echoes are still here. Shadows shifted slightly, micro-arcs, threading tension even in absence. Subtle environmental cues insisting on attention. Can mastery really last beyond moments like that? Wei, Coyerly said. Elon's eyes scanned streets, reflections, puddles, distant metallic taps, all indicators of layered micro-arcs, narrative tension, and ethical responsibility remaining even in calm. Yes, he said softly, Mastery doesn't vanish with the storm. Observation shapes reality. Awareness integrates complexity. Presence asserts influence. Ethical comprehension guides choice. Even now, you are mastering what isn't visible, the residual threads of every choice, every trajectory, every consequence. She exhaled slowly, recalibrating posture, presence radiating quiet authority. So, it's not over because we survived. It's over when we understand what it all means. Microbeats aligned with environmental tension, shadow motifs lingering, subtle wind shifting debris across streets. Ethical mastery threaded through thought. Comprehension now internalized. Yes, Elon replied, small smile threading calm authority. Understanding is the final layer. Independent mastery is not just physical control, moral influence, or observation. It's comprehension of outcomes, anticipation of consequences, and presence that remains steady even after the immediate threat has passed. Ahead, faint movements caught her attention. A minor antagonist emerged from an alley, metallic clicks faint but deliberate, micro arcs colliding with environmental tension. Presence radiated subtly, influence nudged motion, observation parsed intent without immediate confrontation. Ethical comprehension dictated minimal intervention, neutralized potential chaos without unnecessary harm. I can see them before they act, she whispered, voice threaded with confidence. And I know what needs to happen. Observation had become foresight. Awareness integrated subtle layers. Presence asserted influence invisibly. Ethical comprehension guided every microbeat. Multi-layered mastery now permanent. The minor antagonist paused, hesitation threading tension through micro-arcs. Shadow motifs flickered as environmental cues collided with invisible influence. Presence, observation, awareness, ethical mastery tools. Fully operational, independent, and absolute. Micro-arcs realigned, narrative tension diffused, no confrontation necessary. Influence. Subtle yet undeniable, reshaped outcome. A soft metallic tap from a nearby fire escape punctuated the moment, micro-arcs rippling through puddle reflections. Shadows shifted subtly, environmental tension layering, small debris rolling across streets. She adjusted posture, synchronized breathing with microbeats, presence asserting authority across overlapping layers. Observation predicted minor trajectory shifts, influence nudged motion. Ethical mastery shaped consequences. The city, already quiet, became a canvas for invisible mastery. I can balance everything, she whispered. Small smile threading pride and comprehension. Multi-layered mastery now included ethical, physical, psychological, and environmental integration complete, invisible, absolute. Presence, influence, observation, ethical comprehension fully internalized. Elon nodded, subtle pride threading calm authority through micro-arcs. Yes, you have achieved it. Multi-layered threats neutralized. Ethical mastery applied. Observation and awareness fully integrated. Presence asserts invisible influence. Independent mastery, permanent, undeniable, first parter. 70 inside, the minor antagonist receded further into shadows. Micro-arcs recalibrating, metallic taps fading. Immediate narrative stabilized. Ensemble, here czar. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical mastery tools, fully wielded, independent, absolute. Influence, invisible yet undeniable, shaping reality without overt action. A sudden gust rattled a neon sign, debris scattering, micro-arcs colliding, shadows pooling. She adjusted posture, recalibrated microbeats, presence asserting authority invisibly. Observation foresaw minor motion shifts. Influence nudged trajectory. Ethical mastery ensured balance without harm. Multi-layered mastery fully operational, even in subtle aftermath. I understand now, she whispered. Small hands flexed subtly, presence radiating quiet authority. Observation, foresight, awareness, armor, influence shaping motion. Ethical mastery, guiding choice. multi-layered mastery, permanent. Every microarc, every shadow motif, every environmental cue interpretable, influenceable, ethically managed. The city stretched ahead, dawn gold fracturing across puddles, shadows pooling, microarcs threading complex residual narratives. Minor antagonists recalibrated, yet immediate narrative resolved through invisible authority. Mastery integrating ethical, physical, psychological comprehension, presence, awareness, observation, ethical mastery, tools permanent, independent, absolute. She looked up at Elon, eyes radiant. I can carry all of it now. The lessons, the choices, the responsibility. Yes, he replied softly, and you already are. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, ethical mastery, permanent companions guiding every step through layered complexity, consequence, and motion. Mastery complete, but its echoes enduring, influencing every residual thread of narrative across the city. A subtle metallic tap sounded behind a corner. A breeze shifted a loose sign. She instinctively adjusted posture, recalibrated microbeats, presence asserting authority. Observation parsed potential microarcs, influence nudged motion. Ethical mastery determined appropriate response. The city itself responded to her presence, environmental layers bending subtly to invisible mastery. I can do it, she whispered, voice steady, full of calm authority. Multi-layered mastery, now internalized, permanent, absolute. Observation, foresight, awareness, integration, influence invisible yet undeniable, ethical comprehension guiding every motion. The storm had passed, but mastery remained, a living extension of her being. Elon's gaze swept the city, puddles reflecting fractured neon, shadows stretching across streets. Yes, this is what independence truly means. Not just surviving the storm, but mastering what remains after it. The echoes, the consequences, the subtle tensions, the moral responsibilities. Mastery persists because comprehension does. She exhaled slowly, small smile threading calm authority. I can move forward and still do what's right. Ethical comprehension fully integrated into independent mastery, invisible influence, observation, awareness all permanent, absolute. The city's pulse normalized slowly, microarcs fading into subtle residual tension, shadows softening, neon flickers steady. Minor antagonists had receded, environmental tension diffused, narrative layers balanced under invisible influence. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical mastery. Fully integrated, independent, absolute. Mastery permanent. She squeezed his hand once more, small voice firm. I understand the responsibility now, and I will carry it. Anaclinaxes, he were rated, he were ospinated are, unexpend, he season, he finio, he were vinded, and expended, with everyone. If you ICA work, he were rated actions, you can send, remaining, he were action sees. Yes, Elon said softly. And you already do. Microbeats, awareness, observation, presence, ethical mastery tools permanent, independent, absolute. Every motion, every shadow, every microarc, every environmental cue, now interpretable, influenceable, and ethically managed. Mastery complete. The dawn gold light stretched fully across rooftops, puddles reflecting fractured brilliance. Elon and his daughter walked forward, synchronized steps, awareness aligned, presence absolute. Multi-layered mastery, ethical comprehension, observation, influence, all permanent, integrated, absolute. The storm had passed. The lessons endured. The city itself seemed quieter, aligned to invisible mastery. Tension balanced. Consequences ethically guided. She looked ahead, small smile radiant, presence calm but assertive. I am ready for anything, and I will do what's right. Elon nodded. Subtle pride threading calm authority across microbeats. Yes, and you already are. Observation, awareness, presence, ethical mastery, permanent companions, guiding every step, threading through reality, shaping outcomes invisibly, undeniably, ethically. Mastery achieved. Multi-layered. Absolute. Enduring. The city held its breath for a moment, puddles still reflecting fractured neon, shadows softening, micro-arcs resolved. The storm was gone, but its lessons persisted. Observation, awareness, influence, ethical mastery tools, fully integrated, independent, permanent, presence invisible yet undeniable, shaping residual motion, guiding consequences, ensuring balance. As Elon and his daughter walked forward, synchronized, aware, ethically grounded, presence asserting invisible authority, they knew mastery is permanent not because of action alone, but because comprehension, ethical influence, observation, and awareness endure beyond the storm. Independent, absolute, undeniable. The city exhaled silently. Mastery whispered in every shadow, in every puddle. In every subtle metallic tap, lessons learned, influence permanent, ethical comprehension integrated. And she carried it all, fully realized, fully operational, fully independent. Mastery isn't complete until its echoes ripple beyond the first storm. The morning air was sharp, tinged with frost, and faint ozone from the lingering storm. The city seemed quieter now, but only at first glance. Shadows still clung to corners, micro-arcs threading tension across wet streets, subtle metallic taps echoing like ghost notes from the night before. Elon and his daughter walked side by side, synchronized yet independently aware, their microbeats attuned to every vibration of the urban landscape. "I feel different," she whispered, glancing at puddle reflections fractured by neon and frost. "Like the city itself is listening." Her voice was calm, measured, but carried undercurrents of exhilaration and caution. Observation, awareness, ethical mastery, and presence, they weren't just tools anymore. They were embedded in her, extensions of perception that worked without conscious effort. Elon smiled faintly, adjusting his pace to match hers. It is. Every environment responds to mastery, even when subtle. The city reacts to presence, to observation, to influence applied invisibly. Your choices ripple outward now, not just through immediate motion, but through consequences yet unseen. A faint metallic clatter came from a fire escape above. Micro-arcs of tension collided with environmental cues. The daughter's gaze flicked upward, subtle shadow motif detected, posture adjusting without conscious thought. "Someone's there," she murmured. Presence radiated. Influence nudged motion. Ethical comprehension dictated minimal interference. Observation parsed intent with precision. The minor antagonist, a ghost of the previous night's conflicts, remained paused, unsure, recalibrating micro-arcs against invisible authority. "Let them move," Elon whispered. Mastery is measured by restraint, by understanding what must be acted upon and what must be left. The antagonist hesitated, shadow motif flickering across cracked walls. Micro-arcs collided, environmental tension layering. She exhaled slowly, adjusting microbeats, presence asserting quiet authority. Observation foresaw motion, influence nudged trajectories. Ethical mastery guided outcome without direct action. The street itself seemed to bend subtly, shadows retreating, puddles reflecting fractured light in alignment with her invisible influence. I can feel the narrative," she said softly. "Even what isn't happening yet. Even what could happen." Each word threaded subtle weight. Awareness, integrating multi-layered trajectories. Environmental microarcs shifted with her presence. Minor antagonists recalibrated, and residual tension settled under invisible authority. A gust of wind rattled a neon sign above, scattering leaves across wet asphalt. Metallic taps echoed faintly from distant alleyways. Presence, observation, awareness, ethical mastery, all operating in perfect harmony. She moved fluidly, each step synchronized with micro-arcs of motion and tension, her influence extending invisibly to stabilize residual conflicts. "You're ready," Elon said, voice steady but tinged with awe. Independent mastery isn't just surviving complexity. It's guiding it ethically, invisibly, permanently. The daughter nodded. A subtle smile curved her lips. "I understand now. Not just the storm, but everything that follows it, the echoes, the ripples, all of it. And Rehisadats. Ahead, A small group of students gathered near the playground, micro-arcs of chatter and tension overlapping. Two minor antagonists from earlier lingered, recalibrating postures and shadow motifs, uncertain how to proceed under her invisible authority. She paused, microbeats aligning, posture shifting imperceptibly, presence radiating quiet command. Observation parsed micro-expressions. Awareness integrated overlapping tensions. Influence nudged trajectories. Ethical mastery dictated minimal disruption. Watch closely, Elon murmured, almost to himself. This is where comprehension and restraint intersect. She moved forward, subtle steps across fractured light. Micro-arcs of anticipation shifted as minor antagonists recalibrated. A discarded paper ball rolled across the pavement, a seemingly insignificant object, but one that reflected her presence, nudged motion, and confirmed awareness. The small chaos of the playground stabilized under invisible influence. I can balance all of it, she whispered. Voice steady, fingers brushing faint frost on a nearby railing. Observation foresaw minor shifts, environmental cues aligned. Ethical influence applied to every trajectory. The city, the playground, the shadows, the neon all subtly bending to invisible mastery. A sudden metallic scrape echoed from above, a loose shutter shifting in the wind. Micro-arcs collided, shadows flickered, puddles reflected, fractured neon. She adjusted stance instinctively, microbeats recalibrated, presence asserting quiet authority. Observation predicted trajectories, influence nudged outcomes. Ethical mastery ensured minimal harm, narrative tension diffused, mastery absolute, integrated, and independent. Elon's eyes followed her subtle motions, noting the fluidity of her presence. Yes, this is the apex of independent mastery. It persists even when action is optional, invisible yet undeniable, subtle yet absolute. The minor antagonists hesitated, shadow motifs flickering across their lines of sight. Environmental micro-arcs shifted subtly. She exhaled, presence radiating invisible authority, influence nudging micro-trajectories, ethical mastery guiding outcomes. Observation foresaw their next moves, integrating multiple layers of potential consequence. The playground, the students, the lingering tension, all aligned under her silent control. I can shape outcomes without touching them, she whispered, and still choose what's right. Ethical comprehension, now fully fused with independent mastery. Every micro-arc, every shadow, every reflection interpreted, influence applied, consequences balanced. Elon nodded, subtle pride threading calm authority through microbeats. You have become the embodiment of multi-layered mastery. Observation, awareness, presence, ethical comprehension. Tools permanent, independent, absolute. And now, you understand the responsibility that comes with them. 1921. And specially talked of it. Absolutive resort, makeology. Absolutive excess of area. You understand the response. A faint wind swept across the playground, rattling a loose swing chain. Micro-arcs collided with environmental cues, shadows pooled and shifted, reflections fractured. She adjusted stance, microbeats aligning, presence, radiating authority. Observation foresaw trajectories. Influence, nudged, motion, ethical mastery, guided outcomes. Residual, narrative tension, neutralized, without confrontation. Multi-layered mastery, complete, integrated, and permanent. I will carry it, she whispered, voice steady, filled with calm authority. I will guide, balance, and act only when necessary. I understand responsibility now, fully. Yes, Elon said softly, and you already do. Microbeats, presence, observation, awareness, ethical mastery, permanent companions, guiding every step through layered complexity, consequence, and motion. Mastery endured beyond immediate action. Influence invisible yet undeniable. Ethical comprehension fully integrated. A metallic tap from the distant fire escape echoed faintly, wind shifting a neon sign. Micro-arcs collided. Environmental tension layered. She paused briefly, adjusted posture, presence radiating calm authority. Observation foresaw minor motions, influence nudged trajectories. Ethical mastery ensured minimal disruption. Residual micro-arcs settled under invisible mastery. I can face any situation, she whispered. Even if no one else notices it, even if the consequences are invisible, I can guide it all. Elon's gaze swept across the city, neon reflections fractured across puddles, shadows stretching over streets, micro-arcs resolved into subtle equilibrium. Yes, mastery persists because comprehension persists. Influence, observation, awareness, ethical guidance, they endure. And now, you are their living embodiment. She exhaled slowly, presence radiating quiet authority. I understand the city, the people, the choices, everything that flows from action and inaction. Multi-layered mastery, now fully integrated, invisible yet undeniable. Observation, foresight, awareness, integration, presence, influence, and ethical mastery, tools, permanent, independent, absolute. The playground settled, students returning to normal chatter, minor antagonists receding into shadows, environmental microarcs aligned. Multi-layered mastery, permanent influence, ethical calibration, observation, and awareness, all fully realized. The city itself seemed to respond subtly, aligned to invisible mastery, residual tension balanced, consequences ethically guided. She squeezed Elon's hand once more, small smile radiant. I am ready for anything, and I will do what's right. Yes, Elon whispered, subtle pride threading calm authority through microbeats. And you already are. Observation, awareness, presence, ethical mastery, permanent companions, guiding every step, shaping outcomes invisibly and ethically. Multi-layered mastery realized, independent, absolute, enduring. The dawn gold light stretched fully across rooftops, puddles reflecting fractured brilliance. Streets still held micro-arcs of residual tension, shadows softening, neon flickers steady. Presence, awareness, observation, ethical mastery, tools, fully integrated, independent, permanent. Mastery complete, yet alive, echoing beyond the first storm. Even in silence, even in calm, every step she took carried influence. Every shadow bent subtly. Every puddle reflected not just neon, but intention, consequence, and ethical guidance. The storm had ended, but its lessons, its echoes, its mastery endured permanent, absolute, undeniable, and she walked forward, ready for the city, ready for life, carrying mastery, responsibility, and ethical influence as her invisible yet absolute companions. True mastery leaves traces not just in action, but in the world itself. The city breathed differently that morning. Neon flickers had softened, streets gleamed with frost and dew, and even the smallest shadow seemed to carry intention. Elon walked beside his daughter, though now the weight of guidance felt lighter. She moved with quiet authority, presence, radiating subtle influence over every microarc in the environment. The storm was long gone, but its echoes persisted, layered through streets, puddles, neon, and whispers of wind. I can feel it, she whispered, gaze scanning the horizon. Not just what's around me, but everything connected to it. The choices people make, the echoes they leave. I can see the threads. Each word carried depth, a harmony of observation, awareness, influence, and ethical comprehension. She had internalized mastery so fully that even reflection became a tool. Micro-arcs of thought threading with reality, shaping subtle outcomes without conscious effort. Elon's expression softened, a rare serenity threading his voice. Yes, that's the final stage. Not just managing immediate consequences, but understanding residual impact, the ripples of mastery beyond action. You influence, even without acting, because comprehension extends beyond the moment. Ahead, the playground held its quiet normalcy. Students laughed softly, unaware of micro-arcs subtly balanced around them. Minor antagonists, once disruptive, now navigated social tensions smoothly, guided invisibly by her presence. Even the environment seemed to conform, wind, shadows, reflections, and ambient neon aligned with her subtle ethical influence. A discarded paper ball rolled lazily across the pavement, reflecting fractured dawn gold. Her gaze followed it, microbeats adjusting instinctively. Even the smallest things carry potential, she murmured. Observation foresaw trajectories, influence nudged motion, ethical mastery, calibrated outcomes. Every action, every inaction, every reflection was a thread in a larger web she now understood and could shape. You've become the embodiment of permanent influence, Elon said softly. Your mastery isn't just reactive, it's proactive, invisible, ethical. You guide without forcing, balance without controlling. The wind shifted again, rattling a loose shutter on a distant building. Micro arcs of environmental tension collided with shadows pooling across wet asphalt. The daughter adjusted her stance, microbeats aligning with the subtle rhythms of city life. Observation foresaw trajectories. Influence nudged motion. Ethical mastery applied invisibly. A minor antagonist hesitated, uncertain, recalibrating under her presence. Motion aligned, narrative tension diffused, city itself reflecting balance. I understand the responsibility of it all, she whispered. Not just controlling outcomes, but shaping possibility, guiding what could be, ethically, without overstepping. The city, the people, they all respond. Presence radiated outward, subtle yet absolute, guiding multi-layered interactions, integrating psychological, environmental, and social micro-arcs seamlessly. Elon smiled, pride threading calm authority. Yes, true mastery leaves traces in every interaction, every environment, every thought it touches. And you carry it ethically, invisibly, permanently. They reached a narrow alley where shadows pooled and light fractured against wet brick. Metallic taps echoed faintly from distant scaffolding, micro arcs of motion intersecting with environmental tension. She paused, presence radiating, microbeats aligning, observation parsing potential trajectories. Ethical mastery dictated restraint, influence nudged motion subtly, ensuring balance without direct intervention. Even small debris moved with invisible harmony, reflecting her integrated control. I can see beyond the immediate, she murmured. Not just what's happening, but what could happen in hours, days, even weeks. Micro arcs extend beyond action. Influence extends beyond me. Multi-layered mastery, fully integrated, independent, absolute. Well, 5. Well, 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 reverent, well integrated mastery, and shouter, well say for Mrs. Intala. Observation, foresight, awareness, ethical comprehension, presence, influence, all operating as a seamless extension of her being. Elon watched silently. Every gesture, every breath, every subtle adjustment radiated authority and responsibility. That's legacy, he said softly. Not the fame or recognition, not control over others, but the ripple you leave behind, ethical, balanced, invisible. The world shifts subtly because of your presence. Ahead, the city's subtle micro-arcs shifted naturally. Pedestrians passed unaware, yet their paths, motions, and decisions were gently guided by her invisible influence. Minor conflicts dissolved without confrontation. Environmental tension balanced. Shadows aligned. Neon reflections fractured harmoniously. She moved through it all with ease. Steps perfectly synchronized with micro-arcs. Influence applied invisibly. Ethical mastery fully integrated. I see it now, she whispered. Mastery isn't just for moments of crisis. It's for every moment afterward, the echoes, the threads, the small changes that build the future. Her voice held quiet authority, layered with comprehension, ethical grounding, and subtle pride. A gust of wind swept past, scattering leaves across the streets. Micro-arcs collided with puddle reflections, metallic taps echoed faintly. She adjusted posture, microbeats recalibrated, presence radiating authority. Observation foresaw minor shifts, influence nudged outcomes. Ethical mastery ensured minimal disruption. Every micro-movement, every residual tension, every shadow became a canvas for her mastery. Elon nodded. And you've internalized it. The lessons, the ethics, the awareness, the presence, they're permanent. Not because you act on every threat, but because your comprehension extends influence beyond the immediate. You shape reality by understanding it. You shape reality by understanding it. She exhaled slowly, small smile radiant. I can guide without controlling, influence without forcing, balance without harming. Every choice echoes, every microarc matters. Even the city itself listens now. Multi-layered mastery, fully integrated, invisible yet undeniable, absolute yet ethical. Ahead, a faint reflection shimmered in a puddle. A minor antagonist hesitated, shadow motif flickering. She adjusted stance, microbeats aligning, presence asserting invisible authority. Observation parsed potential motions. Influence nudged trajectories. Ethical mastery ensured minimal disruption. Environmental microarcs aligned with her invisible influence. Narrative tension resolved. I understand legacy now, she whispered. Not the recognition, not the power, but the subtle guidance, the invisible threads, the ripple that shapes without forcing. That is permanent mastery. Elon's gaze swept the city. Neon reflections fractured across puddles, shadows stretching over streets, microarcs resolved into subtle equilibrium. Yes, legacy is not built in visible victories, but in the invisible balance left behind. And you carry it ethically, invisibly, absolutely. She exhaled, presence radiating calm authority. I am ready for anything, and I will guide responsibly. The city seemed to breathe in response. Shadows pooled gracefully, puddles reflected fractured neon. Environmental microarcs stabilized. Minor antagonists adjusted naturally to subtle influence. Pedestrian motion aligned organically, residual tension diffused. Observation, awareness, influence, ethical, mastery, and presence, all fully integrated, independent, permanent, mastery absolute. She squeezed Elon's hand once more, small smile radiant. I understand the world now, not just the moments I act, but every subtle echo that follows. I can guide it ethically. Yes, Elon said softly, and you already do. Microbeats, presence, observation, awareness, ethical mastery, permanent companions, guiding every step, threading influence invisibly through every interaction, shaping outcomes, subtly, permanently. A faint metallic tap echoed from a distant fire escape. A gentle breeze shifted a neon sign. Shadows flickered, microarcs collided, puddles reflected fractured brilliance. She paused briefly, microbeats aligning, presence asserting invisible authority. Observation foresaw motion, influence nudged trajectory, ethical mastery ensured minimal disruption. The city itself seemed to resonate with her mastery, every element aligned under invisible guidance. I understand now, she whispered. Mastery isn't just surviving, or even acting, it's shaping the future ethically, invisibly, permanently, even when no one notices. Elon's voice threaded calm pride through the morning air. And you've become that. Every shadow, every reflection, every microarc now carries your influence. You are mastery realized, independent, absolute, enduring. The city exhaled silently. Neon reflected across puddles, shadows softened, residual microarcs balanced. Environmental tension diffused, minor conflicts resolved invisibly. Presence, observation, awareness, ethical mastery tools. Fully integrated, invisible, absolute. Influence, ethical guidance, comprehension, permanent companions. Echoing through every subtle motion, she stepped forward, radiant in calm authority, carrying mastery, ethical influence, and subtle guidance into every corner of the city. The storm was gone, the lessons persisted, the echoes endured, and legacy permanent, absolute, undeniable was hers to guide.